Chapter 9. There was no mistaking it. Staring at the boy, he looked no younger than maybe 10 or 11 years old. A younger version of him? Why? As he gave chase, he quickly lost himself at the first thing he noticed around him. It was indeed a house of mirrors, and he ran right into it, completely surrounded by them. "Hey kid! Come back!" he yelled to him. But the pitter-patter footsteps kept growing fainter and fainter until it was gone completely for even his heightened senses to pick up anymore. His nose was at least workable now in this room, since it was much warmer than outside. Taking it slow, he followed the main walkway of the funhouse, hoping to find an exit quickly. What's going on here? I hate this feeling like all these mirrors are watching me. The eerie presence never faded. Dark sculptures of clowns and theater masks littered the top of the ceilings and above the mirrors on the walls. The entire house was light yet dim, as if a single light bulb was to provide for the entire building. He finally came to a dead end. The bizarre staring of the mirrors left him incredibly uneasy. He knew something was wrong. He was completely alone in a house of mirrors after chasing a 10-year-old version of himself, which he thought was a complete hallucination. Silence. He examined each reflection carefully. 12 full-bodied mirrors total. The middle right mirror, however, had no glass. It was just wood with no reflection. His heart slowly but surely rose into his throat as the fear of being watched and preyed upon grew every second he stood with his back turned. The dead reflections were not only beginning to terrify him, they were beginning to anger him. He had no idea where he was, how he got here, or how to get out. "What the hell are you looking at?" he yelled at the reflection in front of him. The echo slowly faded out as the reflections returned nothing but what the original displayed. It was quiet again. "I can't do this. I'm gonna go fucking nuts if I don't get out of this place." His still cold nose quickly perked as he picked up a scent. Directly behind him. He quickly turned in a defensive stance, only to find the adolescent version of himself standing there with his head up looking at him. In the boy's arms he was carrying what looked like a small white dog. It fit perfectly into his small arms as he cradled it while staring at him. "That's Shu," the younger Kiba replied. "He's sleeping." His eyes opened in shock. Okay, now he knew he was going crazy. He was talking to himself. His 6-year younger self. The young Kiba slowly turned to walk away. Kiba quickly followed behind, not wanting to stay in the building anymore. As he left, the reflections did not change. They remained the still standing figures when Kiba originally entered the room. Their reflection never faded. Finally they reached the entrance where they originally met. Except this time the festival, everything was gone. Only the funhouse was behind them. 10 feet away laid a large oak tree lightly coated with snow. Unaffected by the effects of the weather, its greenery flourished as if spring had just come anew. The young Kiba walked next to the tree before pointing to a tombstone next to it. "What is that?" Kiba asked as he approached. "A grave," he quietly responded, stroking a sleeping Akamaru. Kiba kneeled down to wipe the snow away from the stone slab. It was unmarked but showed signs of erosion. "Someone put this grave here but didn't put a name on it? Whose grave is this?" Kiba asked. What struck him as odd was not the fact that the grave was unmarked or that it had been there for so long and was weathering away. It was the ground to lay the body in. It was fresh. Someone had just been digging here recently. And with the weather interfering with his nose, he couldn't smell if there was a body inside that may have been desecrated or not. Scene change, increase pressure. "We're gonna need about 3 more quarts of B before we begin the transfusion." "Yes, ma'am," one of the nurses said as she moved to the back of the room collecting cases of blood. 7 hours into surgery, there was still little progress. If Tsunade moved too many cells out of his system, it would kill him, as many of the attached cells are greatly affecting his white blood count. Because his wound is so open, an infection is highly possible even in the room of professionals. The process of moving the heavy concentration of cells in exchange for free and essentially non-contaminated ones would be a long and stressful process. "Kiba, keep fighting, kiddo. Scene change, do you know the person buried here? He asked again, still staring at the grave. When he turned to ask the younger version a question, he was gone. The small Akamaru was gone as well. Standing up, Kiba took a quick view around to see where he might have gone. Where did he come on? Kiba looked to his left only to find a young pink-haired girl in the distance. Dressed appropriately for winter, her thick brown coat and black pants exposed her hair even further. Sakura? No way. But she's so young. Like the little me. The younger Sakura laughed as she waved over towards Kiba. After he pointed to himself to confirm, she simply nodded. As he approached her, he kept his eyes open for the other Kiba. He couldn't have gone far, he just had to look. Wow, big Kiba. You're a giant now. I guess my mom was right about getting big and strong by eating our vegetables. Kiba looked down at the younger Sakura. She was around the same age as the other Kiba with the red ribbon she wore in the academy and all. I must be dreaming all of this. How can I be seeing all of this? He thought to himself. Where is everyone, Sakura? Kiba asked. Over there. Young Sakura pointed. Turning around, he saw them. Everyone. All 11 of their group, including Sasuke. Just the same age as well. Even younger Kiba was among them. Hey guys, look. A younger Naruto said. It's Big Kiba. What are you doing out of the mirror, Big Kiba? Asked a younger Choji. Mirror? He thought about it for a second. Then it hit him. That wooden mirror. The one without the glass. What do they mean by being out of it though? Stop it, you guys. Young Sakura said, standing in front of Kiba. You know the rules, Sakura. Young Sasuke said. We have to bring him back to the mirror. Young Shikamaru spoke up. No exceptions. Young Shino said in the back. No. Young Sakura yelled. You're not taking him back. What? What the fuck is this? I gotta get out of here. If you cannot follow us. Young Niji said. Then you leave us no choice. Young Lee spoke. Suddenly a hungry look became of the other 10 as they approached them slowly. Young Sakura kept yelling at them, but they were unfazed. Young Kiba simply stood in the back with his hands in his pockets, looking down with the small Akamaru in his jacket. He was the only one not driven to them. He simply walked away. Hey! Kiba yelled to his younger self. Come back. Run, Big Kiba. Sakura pushed him as a young Sasuke and Naruto grabbed her, pinning her down. Get off her. Kiba yelled, kicking the young Sasuke off and grabbing young Naruto and throwing him. But just as they were knocked off, Niji Ino Lee and Hinata's variations were already on top of her, kunais drawn. I said get. Kiba attempted to scream but was cut off from a chop to the back of his head. As he fell, his vision slowly fell into darkness as he saw all 10 with their knives drawing, plunging simultaneously into the young girl's back. Damn it, just as quickly as he fell, he awoke in an empty field. The snow was still falling, but there was nothing, no one. Sakura. He shouted, but no one responded. Even the fun house, the giant oak, it was all gone. It was just an empty meadow of snow and more falling snow. He took a direction in front of him and started walking. Nothing seemed in view of the horizon. Just more snow. Just more nothing. I can't keep going on like this. Where is everyone? Where am I? Warm air filled the back of his neck. His muscles were so contracted he couldn't react fast enough to turn around before hearing the sounds escape. You're in my world now. He quickly jumped away and turned around. There stood Yukon. The man who had trapped him here. It had to be him. His face hadn't changed a bit. He looked exactly the same from the first time they fought. Except this time it was just him. You. What is this? He demanded. You don't get to ask those kinds of questions here, kid. He snapped back. Like hell. How did you survive? I saw you die. Kankuro killed you. Yukon simply laughed, finally controlling himself. Such a fool. What? He growled. Do you not remember anything from that last fight we had? His mind flashed back to when Yukon fused into his body. You know that the network in our bodies through which chakra passes is deeply interwoven with our organs, do you not? It's a maze threaded through the tissues that make up our organs, the cells that make up those tissues. Even within each individual protein, the very building blocks of our cells. Once in stage 2, I'm able to use chakra to dismantle and reconstruct these cells and proteins at will. Breaking my body down into tiny particles, I seek to my own opponent, then I return to my original form inside their body. There's no way. Yukon laughed loudly at Kiba's face of realization. I never died. I had left traces of my cells inside of your body this entire time. Slowly, I was able to build enough strength inside of you to swim up into your central nervous system and begin my dissection of your puny little brain. He chuckled again. We're like brothers. Fuck you. I'm not your fucking brother. He fused in chakra to his hands to extend them to longer, sharper, thicker claws. We won't be anything after too long. After I finish you here, there will be no us, there will only be me. He yelled as he rushed Kiba. Kiba stood his ground, trying to examine what to do. Okay. I know I have him beat in speed. There's only a few things I can do. He's a close quarters guy like me. And his brother isn't here either. Yukon quickly threw a fist at Kiba, who jumped out of the way, swiping at Yukon's face, who bent himself backwards before back-flipping and taking a stance a short distance away. But Akamaru's not here either. That means my jutsu is only at half strength at best. Damn it, think. What can I do? Yukon chuckled. You can actually dodge my attacks without running out of breath. I'm impressed. Perhaps you have improved. His smile quickly turned as he immediately shifted to his second stage curse mark. Unfortunately, he said, stretching his arms. So have I, scene change, heart rate 168 and climbing. Brain charts are flying off the papers. Where the hell is that extra blood? Tsunade quickly ran to the back of the room, grabbing a defibrillator, and rushed back to Kiba's now seizing body. She quickly grabbed the 2 pads and rubbed them together. Clear. The shock stopped the seizing, but the loss of blood continued. It was everywhere. They were going through pints of blood just to keep him from bleeding out. Still, very little progress had been done to removing Yukon's cells. Scene change, damn it. They were nearly equal in terms of speed. Yukon had a strong advantage in strength, however. Ha ha ha. Yukon laughed. You're still the speedy young fellow you were back then. Too bad all that speed has no power behind it. I'll be sure to remedy that mistake for you once I take that body back for myself. Come fucking try. Kiba yelled as he made a quick hand sign. Ninja art of beast mimicry. All fours jutsu. Yukon stood in amusement. And just what do you think that will accomplish? Kiba stood up and looked at him. Don't blink. Yukon in spite blinked once and Kiba was gone. What? I told you. Don't blink. Yukon couldn't react fast enough as Kiba knocked him back with a strong elbow to his back and quickly ran towards him. He swiped him with both hands but were dodged. Multiple fist barrage. He yelled as he threw what looked like dozens of punches at once. Kiba quickly grabbed the hand before it even hit him. What? That's not possible. You lived inside my body this whole time. You know what I'm capable of, brother. Kiba quickly brought Yukon's arm down before hooking him with his right, staggering Yukon back. He regained control of his arm and threw himself towards Kiba before they each disappeared in relations to extreme speed. Behind a hill of snow, Kiba's younger self watched in disbelief with Akamaru on his head. Quick and constant, Yukon and Kiba would rush each other, throw a punch block and disappear again. Landing to the ground, they met face to face as their fists released in a flurry near impossible to be seen by the untrained eye. Not one of them landed a single hit. It was a raw test of speed. Scene change, the vein. It's clotting. What? Tsunade asked the surgeon. Blood isn't flowing into it. Something's clotting it. Damn it. Get an opening and remove it. Outside the operation room, Akamaru perked his head up as the door on the far side of the waiting room swung open. Before the doors hit the wall came Sakura speeding ahead of Kiba's mother, who was trying to get her to slow down. Sakura. You can't go in, he's in surgery right now. I'm a medical ninja. I can't let him do this without me. She stood as she watched Sakura enter the operating room. Lady Tsunade. Sakura ran in but stepped back at the side of the table. Kiba was covered in blood from his chest down. His entire body was practically opened up as more than 5 surgeons were transfusing his blood while another with Tsunade were working on what appeared to be his heart. Sakura. Get out. Tsunade said without even turning. What? No. Please. You have to let me help. We have this covered. Get outside and wait till this is done. No. Tsunade turned to face Sakura, whose face was red with hurt and anger. If you think I'm just going to let him lay there on the table when I can help and not do anything, you're sadly mistaken. I don't have to apply to surgery, I just need room to work my chakra through his system. Do you have any idea what we're doing here? This isn't some simple patch a patient up surgery. If we miss anything, Kiba will die. Do you understand that? She scowled at her, returning to attempting to remove the clot. Silence filled the operating room as the medics were quickly working, paying little attention to the kunoichi, who appeared she was going to break down. I'm ready. What? Tsunade asked. I can do it. Sakura seriously claimed as she wrapped the loose ends of her hair back into a ponytail. I was your student for a reason. If I can't save his life, I can't call myself a medical ninja for failing to answer the call of helping those in need. Tsunade quickly pointed to her left. Scrub in. We have a lot of work to do. Her smile quickly reached her lips as quickly as it faded when her face became serious again. Milady. Scene change, Kiba flew back to the ground, bouncing across the snow onto his back. Something happened during that fight just then. Yukon didn't use poison in his weapons and Kiba knew he was faster than him at that point. So why was his heart in so much gripping pain? Ha 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 ha. Yukon shrieked, approaching him slowly. It seems you're not cut out for the long haul after all, little puppy. Kiba struggled to get on his feet. I can't move. What's going on? A minute ago I was taking him to town, why did all of my strength just suddenly leave me? You see, we're connected. Because my cells are working through yours now, your pain and discomfort, even a simple paper cut feeds me more and more power. It's like a constant chakra charger. Every time you hurt I gain. His eyes opened. He's right. I'm still dreaming. I must still be in surgery. That means it can't be going well. I have to stall him for as long as I can until things get better. If things get worse, they'll wake up to find him instead of me. I must say I wish Sakan was here to see this. It's so lonely traveling alone. Fighting alone. But the time away has been good for my stamina. And with a body like yours at my disposal, he reached for Kiba's face with his fingers stroking them. I'll be able to free myself of this prison. Once I kill you, your mind will be all mine. You can sit and watch as I rip the intestines right out of your dearest friends and relatives. It will be quite a show, I can assure you. I can't move. It can't end like this. Not while I made you breakfast. It's ready whenever you feel like coming down. You know, I never thought I could be so lucky. I can't wait to see you. Sakura, looks like I won't be coming back after all. Yukon chuckled as his fingers left Kiba's face, making a fist, cocking it back ready to smash into him. You put up a pretty good fight, I'll give you that. But this is where it ends. Kiba slowly looked to the sky. Finally night. Strange he didn't notice it before. I love you. He night. Somehow dying here doesn't leave me feeling all too unaccomplished. Let's go, Akamaru. Yukon quickly turned. What in the young Kiba was already in mid-punch, heading straight for Yukon. He quickly sidestepped but realized that he wasn't trying to hit him as he grabbed onto Kiba. Do it, Akamaru. Dynamic marking. The small pup quickly spun in the air, coating the snow in urine, which finally caught Yukon's hair and splashed onto his eyes. Damn it! Yukon shouted. This? What is this? I can't see. Young Kiba quickly picked up Kiba before running with him over his shoulder. Come on. Scene change, heart rate is lowering. Transfusion is nearing the final stages. We just need 5 more cases and we should have enough. Claude is out stitching the vein now. 5 hours since Sakura joined the operation, it was starting to look good. So far anyway. Sakura, keep your chakra flow on his heart. Keep it low enough to where he won't pump out this new blood too quickly, but to where he'll still be in the green. She nodded. Thank you, milady. Tsunade smiled, still focusing on the transfusion. I knew I didn't mess up when I said yes to you. Scene change, Kiba laid against a tree of a forest. His vision was blurry. His strength would come and go instantly. He couldn't figure out what was going on. As he finally was able to focus, he looked to see his younger self sitting with an even smaller Akamaru inside his jacket. Are you okay, Big Me? Kiba looked confused. Big Me? Oh wait, he knows I'm him. Yeah, I'm alright, he said, gripping his stomach for warmth. He's been here for a while. Who has? El Demonio. El Demonio? Kiba looked confused. He's been here for what feels like forever. Here in the memories. He's why everyone attacked Sakura. Kiba looked to the sky. The snow had completely covered the trees. Yukon wouldn't be able to find them for a while even if he looked carefully. The cold would mask their scent, and there didn't look like there was a blood trail anywhere, unlike last time. Little me. Yeah, Big Me? I have a plan, but I need your help. First I have to ask you something. Chapter 10. Oh puppies, come out wherever you are. Yukon sang as he stepped through the brush, entering the forest in search for them. Before he lost his focus completely, he saw them heading into this direction. Unfortunate that the weather is blocking my vision. But it could be worse. Sakan would just be whining the entire time, and there's nothing worse than an annoying sibling, he said to himself as he continued his trudge through the winter forest. Suddenly his attention was caught by the sound of several snapping twigs off to his left. When he looked, nobody was there. He carefully kept his gaze fixed on the pile, listening for any sounds of movement, but nothing came. I need to stay focused. This little brat has to be here somewhere. He could barely move, and his variation couldn't have taken him far. Scene change, but that jutsu. I know. That's why I can't do it without you. You might be a kid version of me, but you know how to work as a team. You got Akamaru, that's proof right there. Young Kiba sat cross-legged as Akamaru laid in his lap, his hands leaned back. Okay, Big Me. Run me through the hand seals again. I don't want to mess this up. Kiba smirked. No problem. Watch, I know it's scary at first, but I promise if you just follow my lead we'll be okay. Young Kiba smiled as he watched his variation instruct him. Scene change, we got it, Lady Tsunade. Blood type B transfusion is complete. Stitching abdominal region now. Heart rate falling into normal range now. Pulse is stabilizing. Tsunade wiped her forehead off in relief. 15 hours of surgery and over a quarter of their village's total supply of type B blood later, the surgery was finally coming to a close. The surgeons congratulated themselves, but Sakura still remained in her concentration. I need to make sure everything starts out all right. I just want to make sure. Tsunade nodded. I'll stay here with you. The rest of you are dismissed. Good work. With that, the surgeons left the room. When the last one left, another moment went by as Tsume entered the room accompanied by Akamaru and Kuramaru. How is he? She asked sternly. The operation was a success. Sakura is checking to make sure his vitals adjust to the new blood properly before we send him into recovery. The team is on standby in case something goes wrong. She nodded. Thank you, Lady Hokage. She shook her head. Sakura is the one you should be thanking. Not me. Tsume looked at Sakura, still in focus. I never said this to you, but I am sorry I ever doubted you. You mean the world to my son. Though her eyes were closed, her ears were not. A small smile escaped her lips. Thank you, ma'am. He means the world to me too. That's why I would never let anything happen to him. Tsume smiled. I'm glad. Scene change, the search was over. Yukon finally found his target. There, standing in front of him about 70 feet away leaning against a tree, was Kiba gripping his arm. He. So it looks like your little clone decided to give up on you and run? A logical decision, but I still think that's rather cold-hearted even for someone like me. Kiba gave a weak laugh as Yukon approached him. It's ironic, isn't it? We're in my mind and I can't even win a game on my own home turf. That's pretty embarrassing. It is. But don't worry, it won't be yours to worry about much longer. Yukon laughed as charged at him. Kiba merely picked himself up from the tree as he readied himself for the first blow. A quick strike from above but was blocked. Fool! You keep falling for the same old trick. Yukon taunted as his left arm went straight into his stomach, causing him to gasp for air as blood shot from his mouth. Kiba smirked as he started laughing. What? And so do you. Yukon tried to jerk back, but it was too late. Kiba grabbed his punching arm, keeping him in place. What? What's going on? You think you can win by grabbing me like last time when there's no one around? Suddenly a sound of falling trees fell on his ears coming from behind. No way. Fong over Fong. A younger Kiba cried as him and Akamaru flew towards Yukon from horizontal sides. Let go of me, you little bastard. Yukon smashed his free hand into Kiba's face, releasing him from his grip and knocking Kiba into the snow on his back. Yukon narrowly escaped the attack as young Kiba and Akamaru quickly turned and began their speed towards Yukon at an alarmingly fast speed, nearing the speed of Kiba's wolf. Fong over Fong. I'm not falling for the same old trick again. I'm not my brother, I won't play games with any of you. He quickly bit into both of his thumbs, making the single hand seal. Summoning Jutsu Double Rashomon. As he finishes, he places both hands to the ground as two of the demonic gates rise in front of him to protect him from the attack. Poor kid hasn't felt the sting of the gate yet. You'll find out soon enough. Sorry brother, but you fell for the same trick again for the second and final time. Yukon could only turn as Kiba was already behind him, making a stance to trip him. Without any time to react, he lost his balance and began to fall. The first attack is always a fake, he said as he began his attack. Leaf Rising Wind. His foot planted itself into Yukon's back, sending him up into the air at an incredible speed. There's no way I can lose. Not when I've come this close. His view of the gates saw them as tiny even for being as large as they are. He was still going up despite finally regaining his balance, and the air was growing thin as he barely noticed the three whirling gusts of wind appearing to him in a triangular formation, finally stopping to reveal their physical forms. 3 Kibas. 2 younger ones and the original facing directly in front of him. Before he could throw a punch, one of the young Kibas elbowed him in the back of the head, sending him flying downward. Time to finish this, Kiba shouted. With that, all three began a complex combination of hand seals, finally stopping on horse, speaking in unison. Inuzuka style Forbidden Jutsu Triple Jet Stream. Yukon was flying downward as he heard the jutsu being completed. He forced himself to face them only to be in the pathway of what appeared to be a completely black tornado. Sorry Sakon. Guess this is it for me, he said while falling out of his second stage curse mark into his original form. With that, the faster-than-sound twister collided directly into Yukon's torso. The speed quickly cut into his skin before finally ripping his entire midsection apart in a bloody fashion, sending large chunks of his body in several different directions. The tornado finally stopped as the 3 ninja caught themselves hitting the snow, although they couldn't move after landing. The young Kiba on the left finally gave way, returning to be Akamaru before collapsing into the snow. Akamaru! Yelled young Kiba. Don't worry, Kiba said. He'll be okay. That jutsu won't kill him. But we won't be able to move for a while. The triple jet stream is faster than the speed of sound, completely cutting all 5 senses off from us. And it can only shoot in one direction. If it goes off and if we don't hit somebody, we'll keep going until we do. And if we're in it for too long, we'll suffocate. That's why we're so out of breath and exhausted. Young Kiba only nodded, probably still confused, but tried to show some understanding. What happens now? Kiba laughed. To be honest, I don't know. All we can do now is wait until we get our strength back. His voice slowly grew weak as he passed out from exhaustion. I did it, who would have thought? Scene change, it was warm. He was covered too from the feel of what seemed like a blanket. Kiba opened his eyes only to find his eyes reflected back at him. He was back in the funhouse. And he wasn't alone. All of the 10 younger variations who attacked Sakura were standing there in a crowd in front of him. What's going on? Kiba asked, turning around to see his younger self sitting up, not speaking but watching the younger ninjas stare at them. Akamaru laid next to him, still asleep. Looks like you did it, young Niji commented. Thank you for killing El Demonio. Thank you? Kiba snapped. You little motherfuckers all ganged up on Sakura and knocked me out. They all stood aside as young Sakura slowly walked towards him, completely unharmed. What? You're okay? Young Sakura only smiled. It was a curse. And I am only a memory. I can't be killed, and I was the only one who wasn't affected by El Demonio's curse. Curse? What are you talking about? When he came to us, young Sasuke stated. He put us all under a spell that made us obey him. We could see outside, but our bodies and voices were completely at his mercy. And because we cannot be killed, he could torture us for all eternity if we disobeyed him. Kiba looked over to his young self. Wait. What about little me? How come he didn't turn? Young Choji spoke up. He's your memory. It's you essentially. He couldn't control your memories because your current self was still alive. That's why he had to try and kill you. Huh. It makes sense now. You have done a great thing. Young Lee said, smiling and bowing to him. Thanks, I guess. Kiba replied, still very lost by this whole situation. Kiba. Young Sakura squealed as she ran to hug the younger version, still sitting up, dazed from recently waking up. You're okay, she said, burying her face into his jacket. A still face quickly beamed a wide grin. Of course I'm okay. I mean, compared to what you went through, this is nothing. Slap. Why do you have to be so full of yourself? Young Sakura yelled at him. Young Kiba simply laid back in defeat as the red mark on his cheek deepened in color. Jesus. Is that how I really am? I gotta stop that. Even my little me is as bad as I am. Kiba thought, looking at his younger self cowering in fear below young Sakura. Ow, Sakura, why'd you hit me? Kiba asked, still on the ground and confused as to why he was subjected to such violent abuse. Humph. She crossed her arms, turning herself away from him. Don't worry, Kiba said, looking at young Sakura. He's like that. You'll get used to him, he grinned widely, giving a thumbs up similar to Guy's. Trust me. I guess. Young Sakura huffed. So what do I do now? Kiba asked in the direction of the crowd. Now? Now you go back. Take a look. Young Shino pointed behind them. Kiba turned to see the original 12 mirrors. Now, instead of reflections of himself, each one had a picture of the 11 ninjas he had grown so close to. I see. He examined the mirrors, coming to the middle left and middle right. The middle left's mirror contained an image of Sakura in his most recent memory of her. Then that wooden mirror. It's yours! Young Naruto exclaimed. All of your memories have been wandering around ever since El Demonio came. Now that he is gone, we can all rest back inside your mind and you can return back to your world. Young Lee explained. Wow. Lee, is that you? Kiba asked, confused as to how Lee could explain something so intelligently. What? Young Lee asked, completely oblivious to what Kiba said to him. Never mind. He replied. So how do I do this? It's a real drag, but I'll show you. Young Shikamaru stood in front of them. He walked over to the mirror of his own present-day reflection and turned to face Kiba. All you do is walk into the mirror. Your young variation has to step in with you since you can't have a present without a past and vice versa. For us, we can finally go back inside. Originally we couldn't because El Demonio had images of only you, keeping us away from returning to the memories of ourselves within your mind. But since that's out of the way, we can finally head back. Young Shikamaru waved to Kiba as he stepped into the reflection of his older variation. He walked into it as if he was stepping into a pool for a swim. The glass rippled as his body finally came in completely and the glass stilled. The others followed one by one, returning to their present memories until only young Sakura and young Kiba remained. Bye, Big Kiba. Young Sakura waved as she walked up to the mirror. Goodbye, Sakura. With that, she stepped into the mirror, giving similar results as the others before her. Guess that's our cue. Young Kiba said, standing up, heading to the mirror with Akamaru on his head. Hold on, Kiba interrupted. When I first met you, there was an unmarked grave under the big oak tree outside the funhouse. What was it? Young Kiba shrugged his shoulders. That's a memory buried far in the back of our mind. Maybe someday you'll be able to find it. He nodded. I guess so. He stepped forward to the mirror with his small variation to his right. Ready? Young Kiba asked. Kiba gave a final look to the funhouse. All of the mirrors showing images of all of the ninjas in his grade. What they looked like now, aside from Sasuke, who was wearing the same outfit and looked the same as he did when he last saw him at the Chunin exams all those years ago. Yeah, he said, looking into the wooden pallet which was now glass, rippling as they were near. I've had enough of this place to last me a lifetime. Young Kiba smiled and they both entered the mirror, with the smaller entering first. Kiba felt himself enter the glass, feeling as if he was diving into the ocean. And he awoke. Gasping for air, he jerked up in his hospital bed, quickly covering his eyes from the brightness hitting him. Ack. Damn it. Who has lights this fucking bright? He wasn't able to see to his left, a strong pair of arms wrapping around his side, instinctively causing him to move his hands despite the stinging in his eyes. But his eyes weren't hurt enough to not notice Sakura holding him as tears flooded down her face. Sakura, hey, it took you long enough to wake up, lazy bum. He reached an arm to wrap her around him but stopped at the pain in his chest. Don't move. Damn it, fuck. Sakura laid him back into the bed slowly. It's the stitches. Please don't try and move. Your entire body is covered with them. Wait, then she nodded. The operation was a success. He smiled as he laid in the bed. It worked. Then was I just dreaming? Or did it actually happen? Kiba? She asked, noticing his face. Yeah. What's wrong? He shook his head. Nothing. I'm just tired. She nodded. I can go so you can rest. She stood up but was stopped as his hand grabbed hers. You didn't let me finish. I was going to say I'm just tired of being away from you. He grinned as he pulled her onto the bed directly on top of him. I missed you. She said, stroking his cheeks with her hands, running them up his head, ruffling his hair. Not as much as I missed you, he kissed her, moving over on the bed and allowing her room to lie down next to him. And boy, have I got one heck of a story to tell ya. Chapter 11. Only 3 weeks after Kiba's surgery, he was allowed back out. Well, today he would be. It was his last day and he was feeling pretty good. Aside from the lousy hospital food, which he would just get different things from Sakura or his mom or his sister, it was an enjoyable, if not boring, experience. Knock knock knock, come in. Kiba said, staring at the ceiling board. The door opened but no one said anything. Kiba looked over at the door to find Shino standing in the doorway with a small white paper bag in his hand. Shino? Looks like you're doing better. He fixed his glasses before approaching him, taking a seat next to his bed. Yeah. I tell you, this hospital food is doing more damage to me than the surgery did. He laughed. Shino placed the bag next to Kiba on the bed. Immediately Kiba's nose went off the fritz. Is that? Yes. He nodded. He quickly reached into the bag, pulling out a small styrofoam case. He opened it to reveal a large triple meat triple cheese hamburger with everything on it. Immediately he fell in love before devouring it within a short span of a few minutes. Shino watched him, appalled by the speed at which he ate. You would think after being on his team for so long you would get used to his gluttony. Oh man, are those fries? Doesn't seem like anyone can. He thought to himself as Kiba shoveled the fries down into his mouth. Where'd you get this? I haven't had a burger this good since we were at Tanzaku Town. Dunno. He replied. What? What do you mean you don't know? Didn't you get this? He shook his head. Sakura asked me to bring this for you. She's sick. All I did was pick it up on my way over here. This was getting weird. Sakura had been sick for the 4th day in a row already. He knew she wasn't just trying to get out of seeing him, because she'd always show up as soon as she was relieved until the staff kicked her out when visiting hours were over. What was wrong with her? Scene change, she waited. This was the 3rd time testing it to see if it worked. Both times gave the same results. She refused to believe the first 2 to be true. This was the last one. As she waited, she knew this would be the one that made it or broke it. On the other side of the bathroom door on the outside, Ino leaned into the door trying to hear what Sakura was doing. All she did was come to her house with a small plastic bag and locked herself in her bathroom. Since then she's been trying to get her to open it, but nothing. Sakura, Ino said. What's wrong? Can I come in? Sakura said nothing, but Ino could hear small sobs attempting to be muffled. Sakura, please. Suddenly the door opened, Ino almost losing her balance at the suddenness. Standing there was a red-eyed Sakura, tears still lying on her face, as all she did was grab onto Ino and started crying again. What happened? She quietly asked. Sakura said nothing as a small device fell to the wooden floor. Hearing the click, Ino looked down only to gasp while covering her mouth at what she saw. 2 lines? She thought. But that means Ino. Sakura spoke, her voice breaking as her tears finally began to subside. I'm pregnant. Ino sharply inhaled at the news, but had a feeling that's what it was. She said nothing, just held her friend as she started crying again. After a few minutes she finally mustered up enough courage to ask her. Is Kiba the father? She nodded, still pushing her face into Ino's chest for support. It had to be him. She's only had sex one time and it was with him. And ironically that's what happened. Her first time was the one time she didn't stop him to tell him to use a condom, even though she's the one who got him all riled up. I don't know what to do, Ino. Ino didn't either. They were only 16. By all accounts they're still just kids, not parent ready yet. Here was Sakura, her best friend and rival, sobbing in her arms and about a month pregnant. All she could do was hold her. Hold her and hope that an answer would come on its own. Scene change, your stitches will eventually dissolve on their own. You don't need to have them removed, the doctor said. However, you need to take it easy. If at all anything happens, you feel any form of unusual feelings of pain or discomfort, come back immediately. Kiba wasn't paying much attention as he fitted into his old black clothes, finally putting his jacket on. Don't worry, Doc. My girlfriend's a medical ninja. If something happens, she's got me covered. He nodded. I see. Still best be careful. No training for another week. You still need to rest. Kiba pouted but agreed. He knew he wouldn't be much of an asset if he went and threw himself back into the hospital, cause he wanted to try and spar some more. Him and Shino checked out at the main office before stepping out. Outside the main door, the fresh air slapped his senses in a way that made him feel great to be outside. It was a good day to be out of the hospital. So have you heard the news? Shino dryly asked. News? Kiba asked. I've been cooped up this whole time, man. What's up? Asuma sensei's dead. Suddenly his heart dropped. The beautiful day felt like the bitterest form of irony as he simply stared into the street, not focusing on anything. When? He asked. A few days ago. The Akatsuki are in the land of fire right now looking for Naruto. It made sense now. Asuma must have found out about the Akatsuki and went to go fight them. But how did they take him down? Asuma was one of the best ninjas in the village. This was bad. Did the funeral already pass? Kiba asked. Shino shook his head. It's tomorrow. They started walking back towards Kiba's home. Completely quiet but not awkward. When they finally reached his home, Kiba turned around and thanked Shino for the walk home. It's at noon tomorrow, he said. All right. Thanks, Shino. They made their goodbyes and Kiba went into his home while Shino walked away. Mom? Kiba asked loudly as he closed the door. Woof. Kiba looked as Akamaru came running through the back of the house to greet his master, whom he pounced on his chest, licking him in happiness. Ow. Akamaru, not so rough, I still got stitches. Kiba tried to say in pain but was laughing too much to do anything about it. Akamaru finally got off with his tail still in a fast wag. 3 weeks after seeing his master was enough to drive a poor Nin dog crazy. Welcome home, son. Tsume greeted him as her and Kuramaru came from the back. Thanks, Mom. Kiba looked around before remembering what he wanted to say. Where's Asuma Sensei's funeral supposed to be? She shook her head. Asuma was a friend of hers. Not a close one, but they had shared conversations and meals before. She always thought he was too much like his father, yet still kept that rebellious teenage self in his heart till the very end. The same place where we had the service for the third. Right. Okay, well, I'm gonna head up to my room then, see ya, Mom. Kiba said, quickly running up the stairs to his room with Akamaru hot on his trail. His room was just like how he left it. Kicking his shoes off, he laid down on his bed. Akamaru made a bed at the foot of the bed and laid down as well. He laid on his back staring at the ceiling as his mind painted back to the memories of Asuma in his mind. Flashback, so Kiba, Kurenai here tells me you and Sakura have grown rather fond of each other. Yeah. We have. But it's complicated. End flashback, heh. I guess looking back on it, it wasn't so complicated. He closed his eyes, remembering some more. Flashback, you need to decide what you're going to do. You're in a good spot by the sounds of it, but you need to finish it. Don't wait and fall back into the friend zone. Let me tell you, it's nothing fun. I learned that growing up. But I finally learned to take the step forward when it counted. And I couldn't be happier because of it. End flashback, he had to sit up. The tears in his eyes were gathering so widely they were beginning to burn. He couldn't stop it. He just sat there in his bed and cried. Asuma was such a straightforward and good person. Kurenai was so lively with him. They were so happy. Why the hell did this have to happen? That baby, it's going to grow up without a father. All because of those fucking bastards. Just like me. His voice broke as he thought out loud to himself. He wasn't going to come down for dinner. He was just going to stay up in his room tonight. He needed to reflect alone. I swear to God, I'll never let that happen. I won't leave my children behind. I won't die before they're born. He dug his nails into the blanket. Damn it. Why does this have to happen? They were so happy. His tears fell to his hands before sliding onto the blanket. Scene change, all black. He usually wore this color, but it felt different today. A solid black jumpsuit of mourning. He strapped his headband on before sluggishly heading downstairs. His mother and sister had already gone ahead. It was only 11, but he decided to head out anyway. It felt like the skies above were mourning with the rest of the village. Cloudy and gray with the distance of thunder in the far beyond. He couldn't smell rain. Not close by anyway. Everything was slow. His walking, even his own breathing, felt like it had been put in slow motion. Akamaru said nothing, only kept to his master's side as they slowly made their way to the top of the Hokage mansion. He felt late. So many people were already there, it didn't seem like a lot of seats were left. The smell of sadness washed over his sense of smell in an unwelcome fashion as he went to find a seat. He looked up to see a weak hand waving him over. When he looked closer, he saw Kurenai with her hand on a seat next to her. Looks like she had been saving it for him. He took a seat next to her, not saying anything, waiting for her to say something. Luckily, it didn't take long. Kiba. Yeah, Kurenai-sensei? Her cold hand made its way to his cheek as a sorrowful smile escaped her face. Thank you for coming. She ran her other hand atop Akamaru's head. You too, Akamaru. Scene change, she was stiff the moment she saw him. He hadn't seen her yet despite her sticking out like a sore thumb. Sakura watched as Kiba took a seat at the front next to Kurenai. She hadn't talked to him in 5 days. She couldn't. She knew Kiba would smell something on her and figure it out. She couldn't lie to him, that's why she couldn't talk to him. The father of her baby, their baby, was 6 rows in front of her and she had no idea what to do. A few weeks ago she fought tooth and nail to save his life and now she couldn't even speak to him without wanting to fall apart. He'll leave. I know he will. He's a wild boy who's just going to run at the first sight of real responsibility. And he'll break every heart in the process without even knowing she prepared herself for the worst-case scenario. And if he did prove her wrong, what would happen? Would she even keep it? Could she keep it? We're only kids. We're ninjas, not parents. We can't do this. I can't do this. Her look quickly changed as a warm hand touched her shoulder. She quickly looked to find a comforting face on Kakashi, mentally reassuring her she'll be okay. Kakashi-sensei. You can tell me later. I know something else is bothering you. He smiled, returning his attention to the front. Yes. Of course. She did the same. The funeral proceeded as did the last one. Each ninja present brought forth a memento to dedicate to Asuma Sarutobi, son of Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage. When Sakura approached the casket, she could feel Kiba's eyes stabbing into her back. He knew she was there now, but she had to stick with what she was doing. She just needed time to think. There was a picture of Asuma in the center in his usual ninja garb, cigarette and all. To the left was a picture of him with Kurenai, which was a nice change due to Kurenai wearing the standard shinobi clothing issued. They must have just started seeing each other then. I can't imagine what she must be going through right now. As she turned, she purposely turned from her right to avoid looking at Kiba, though through the corner of her right eye she could see him staring at her in wonder, in hurt and confusion as she simply walked by him. Scene change, everyone that needed to say what they needed to say had said it and the funeral had begun to disperse. Damn it. She was here? And just tried to avoid me like that? What the hell is going on? Okay, gotta stay calm. I'll wait till we're gone before I try and talk to her. He just sat and waited as everyone got up and left. Little by little, but no pink-haired Kunoichi had made their way to the exit. Finally, it was just him and Kurenai in the front. He could easily make out the smell of Sakura now. And Kakashi? He stayed with Kurenai, comforting her by simply keeping a hand on her back as he saw out of the corner of his eye Kakashi and Sakura leaving. It's okay, Kiba, Kurenai finally said in a weak voice. I think I need some time alone with Asuma one last time. Kiba nodded before smoothing his hand along her back once more, finally letting off. He was the best out of all of us. Just like his father. Kurenai simply nodded as she remained in her seat as Kiba and Akamaru walked off quietly. All right, boy, Kiba said to his friend. Where is she? Akamaru looked around slowly but barked at the direction his face was in. There? Okay, let's go. Scene change, Kakashi and Sakura were giving a slow, constant pace down the road towards her own home. Everyone had already dispersed from the crowd. It was just them. What? You already knew? Sakura asked in complete surprise. Kakashi nodded his head. It's why I stopped you and Kiba that night. I had to fight back a lot of urges to give him a piece of my mind, and I'm glad I did. He looked at her, smiling. We wouldn't want this little guy in your stomach to never know his father after all. Sakura just looked at him before looking ahead again. I don't know what to do, Kakashi-sensei. I haven't talked to him in 5 days and I felt him looking at me the entire time I was up there in line with you. And I can't stand being so distant with him, but I just don't know how he'll react when I tell him. Well, Kakashi said, stopping Sakura and making her face him. Why don't you tell him yourself? He's been following us for a few minutes. She tried to turn to look, but Kakashi stopped her. Don't let him know we found out. I'm going to head off myself. I have business to attend to. I have a feeling things will work out. Maybe not right away, but give it a chance. You may surprise yourself. And with that, Kakashi disappeared. Kakashi-sensei, wait. She called to him, but he was already gone. She could feel his chakra now. He was really close. But hidden. Is this what it was like to be stalked? Her mind came to focus as he stood next to her on her left. He didn't say anything at first. He simply kicked a rock away before looking over to her. Hey! He whispered. She looked down. She knew she was hurting him. She was breaking him just like she was breaking herself. Hey! She said back. They didn't say anything. They just walked towards the direction of Sakura's home. Their minds were screaming with the desire to talk. Anything. Anyone. They needed something to start. But nobody budged. It was the slowest and quietest walk, feeling like hours were passing by until they finally reached her door. He couldn't take it anymore. He had to say something. Sakura? She unlocked the door, opening it and seemingly ignoring what he had to say. She turned around. Kiba, there's something I need to tell you. No. I can't do this. What am I thinking? I can't tell him this now. What if I can't even finish it? What if I tell him and he just walks away? I can't. His eyes rippled with the small waves of tears gathering in his eyes. I guess it's true what they say. It really was, she had to finish this quick. She couldn't let it drag on anymore. I am Kiba. She swallowed before finally spitting it out. I can't be with you anymore. I'm sorry. Before the reaction could register through his brain, she had closed the door right in front of him. A small breeze blew past him as his hair danced in the wind. He said nothing. He couldn't say anything. His voice was gone and his mind was a movie on pause as he turned and walked home. Akamaru licked his master's hand and was returned by a small pat back. The faithful companion could only do so much. Kiba was quiet until he came home, completely tuning out the television program his mother and sister were watching as he slowly crept his way up into his room. Upon entering, he simply sat his bedside with Akamaru to his right, trying to comfort him. He simply stroked his back, giving a lifeless touch as his face never left the horizon of his field of vision. Too good to be true. Scene change, her face was glued to the pillow. She said the wrong thing. Maybe if she had simply confessed to him she was pregnant and she needed him to stay in her life, things might have turned out differently. But she broke up with him. The wrong thing slipped. The easy way out slipped. What? What's the matter with me? She asked herself as she faced the pillow, which was moist to the touch from her tears. I have a feeling things will work out. Maybe not right away, but give it a chance. You may surprise yourself. I already did surprise myself. She sobbed, burying herself back into the pillow. Scene change, the rain had finally begun pouring. It's happened several times before. It never bothered him, he never moved even during the most extreme conditions he's seen. His commitment was unrivaled. Staring into the blue stone had more meaning today than others. Whenever somebody died, it always amplified. Even if it was just a name in stone. Someday they'll understand why I'm always late. He touched the stone, feeling his hand across the engraved name covering it. It's times like these that I know you would know what to do. He finally finished, taking his hand off the name written in stone. Uchiha Obito. Chapter 12. Gray. That's all colors were to him, how days were to him, how food was, how training was. No more excitement, but no anger. Just no motivation. Another week after Kiba was delivered the news and everything seemed to set itself into a stream of bore. He did everything just as well as he did when he was happy, just losing the feeling behind it. He did the same thing every day. Wake up at 4:30 am, go train until 7:00 p.m, come home, eat and go to bed. Except one of those days he had a mission which took maybe a day to finish. Just a simple escort with Team Kurenai with Shino as acting captain. He didn't fight for control of the mission or leadership or anything. He did his job and just went home. Music was unmoving as well. He'd sit there with his stereo as loud as it could go, with his amp as loud as it could go, shredding minute-long solos, and put it down as if he played a simple song. It was just boring. Everything was boring now. Akamaru always did keep things from going bad to worse, but things were bad, not good. He'd seen Sakura when he went to go report his mission success to the Hokage. She was there filing papers. He could smell her from the time he entered the building. Like a cruel twist of the arm. All his happiness, all his love he'd worked so hard to get was so close, and it had locked its doors to him. His mate, the one he had chosen to claim, only once pushed herself out of his life. She looked at him when he came in but moved away as soon as they made eye contact. The scent of uneasiness flooded his nostrils. He was depressed, he knew he was. He knew he had to do something, and he knew people were noticing. He just gave them the same excuse whenever someone asked, using the passing of Asuma, thinking that could work, and it did at first. But people started to notice him and Sakura not walking alongside anymore. They weren't laughing or beating each other up, it was silent. It was obvious both of them were keeping something, but they never mentioned it to anyone. It's like they pretended they didn't know each other anymore. Good work, you three, Tsunade said in her usual tone. Shino and Hinata, you can go. I want to speak with Kiba. Ah, damn it. He thought. They nodded and left the room. The uneasiness skyrocketed. Just those three stood there. Tsunade watching Kiba while Kiba just stood there facing out the window straight ahead, Sakura pretending to file more papers only to be flipping through the same ones she had been working on since Kiba came in. She couldn't focus and she knew Kiba was upset. The air was getting thicker and hotter until Tsunade finally stood up from her seat. I don't know what the hell has gotten into you two. She made her way to the door, passing by Kiba, who was still staring out the window. But you're both going to stay here until you work it out. And Sakura, stop filing the same paper. You've been doing the same exact file since he walked in. And with that she closed the door, locking it behind her. Their stance didn't change. Kiba was still staring out the window. Akamaru walked up to the door to scratch it, thinking she may let him out. But there was no escape from the conversation about to ensue. The only question was who was going to make the first move. Arf. Akamaru broke the silence. Kiba chuckled. She sure is, buddy. Feeling paranoid, Sakura finally fixed her gaze on Kiba. Was that about me? He shook his head. Nah, the Hokage. He said she was nosy. She gave a weak smile before half turning back to the cabinet. Yeah, she is. And it was quiet again. Damn it. Why? Can't I say anything? Kiba battled in his mind. I don't know why she's doing this. He finally brought it up. Weren't you listening? She said, finally deciding escaping his eyes was impossible. She said we can't come out until we fix whatever is wrong with us. Kiba was starting to lose his cool. Yeah, I was listening, and I'm pretty surprised you said there's something wrong with US when you were the one that ended it. That did it. No escape now. You think I did it because I wanted to? You think I didn't hurt or NO? I don't think you fucking did. He shot back at her, his eyes turning from sadness into a burning anger of angst. Sakura, on the other hand, couldn't get angrier. Not after that. Without any control, a small stream of tears went down her face as she walked by him towards another door in the Hokage's office. Sakura? He asked. She simply opened the door, walking in, and closed it, locking it in the process. Ah, damn it, way to go, Kiba. Sakura, hold on. He ran to the door she had just closed and started banging on it. Just leave, she said with a breaking voice. No. There's obviously something really fucked up about all this, and I don't know what it is, so I need your help. He said, his face completely planted into the door as if he wanted to phase through onto the other side. Scene change. She wasn't sure if that was the best decision she's made, but there was no going back on it. Hopefully when she got back things would be better. Maybe they'd be that happy couple they were a few weeks ago. Or the entire Hokage office could be leveled from the building. Clear skies and a slight constant breeze. She had a nice view of the monument of the Hokages from the top of the mansion. Funny how empty it was when a week ago it was packed for Asuma's funeral. What would you do, Sarutobi-sensei? Her gaze fixed on the monument of the third's face. She had only wished she could have been with the village. Maybe she could have stopped Orochimaru. Maybe he would still be alive. Ah, what can you do? I know that old fool is enjoying himself. Just like you. Her view fixed left to the first and second. Grandpa, uncle. Slam. What? Her focus was quickly lost as a loud rumble came from below. Maybe this wasn't such a good idea in the end. She quickly ran down towards her office. As she approached, high and low shouts became more coherent as she opened the door to find the two she had left behind in each other's faces, with a more than frightened Akamaru laying down at the door, tired despite not being involved. They hadn't even noticed her looking at them, they were too focused on each other. So this is my fault? She yelled at him. Well, how is it mine? He shouted back. God, Kiba, you have no idea. Damn right I don't. 'Cause you won't fucking say anything to me. He finally got directly in her face, close enough to see the glands of her eyes begin to fester in an attempt to bring about tears. You just slammed the fucking door on me after the goddamn funeral. You never explained why. How can I find some sort of peace when I don't even know why the hell you broke up with me? Fine. She huffed, looking down then looking back at him. I'm pregnant, Kiba. Are you happy now? Ahem. Both of them turned to see Tsunade with her arms crossed in the doorway. They hadn't even realized she was there up until now, after probably the entire mansion heard their conversation. Kiba's face remained the same for several minutes. Wide open eyes with a half-open mouth. Everything hit him then. Everything, everyone had been so mysterious with him about it all made sense. I'm afraid if you don't know what I mean now, I can't explain it any further. Be ready to stand for everything you have been taught when the time comes. Do you have any idea what you've done? And so young. I think I know what they're talking about. And they're right, you do need to figure it out on your own. It's a path only we can follow ourselves. We will all be here to support you, but it is not our solemn right to break the news to you. Pup, finding a mate and marking them is more than just sex. I can't believe after everything you've learned you still have no idea how much more you need to commit. They all knew? How did they? He thought. But why did she break up with him? He still didn't understand. Scene change, they were both seated in front of Tsunade's desk. They weren't going anywhere. She had bonded them to the arms of the chairs with chakra bonds. Now then, she began. Since we have all of our cards on the table, why don't you tell us your side first, Kiba? Then Sakura, you can say yours. When you're both done, we can try and reach some sort of understanding. They both sighed. This wasn't going to be fun. They felt like they were being interrogated. All right, Kiba cleared his throat. You saw me. I didn't know she was pregnant. I guess it started when I was in the hospital. At one point she had just completely stopped coming to see me. She said she was sick, which I guess made sense. Anyway, I saw her at the funeral and wanted to talk to her. I mean, it's been 5 days since I last saw her at that point, so I had to ask her what was up. She was straight up ignoring me the entire time. He took a deep breath before starting again. So I caught up to her afterwards and we walked back to her place. When I tried to talk to her, she just broke up with me. Seriously. And now a week later I end up sitting in this chair strapped against my wall, still trying to take in the brand new news that I'm going to be a dad. Arf. And Akamaru's practically going to be an uncle. I mean, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Tsunade simply nodded, trying to keep emotion hidden away. Alright Sakura, your turn. Wait, I wasn't. Yes you are. Tsunade looked at him. Yeah. I'm done. Kiba replied back, slightly frightened by his ex's teacher. Sakura sighed. Okay, just say everything. This is what happens when you hide things. At first I wasn't avoiding Kiba. I really was sick. I was throwing up, often had headaches, and no idea as to why any of this was happening. I finally followed my paranoia and bought a few pregnancy tests. I went to see Ino and tried it 3 times. All of them were positive. At this point her voice was starting to break. Her tears slowly made their way down her face. He had no idea what was going on with me. I couldn't tell him. I was so scared he would just walk away. Or laugh at me or tell me to get rid of it. A million different things were going through my mind. And at the funeral I saw Tsume and Kurenai Sensei's picture and just thought about what if that was me and Kiba. What if he died and I was here holding his child? I couldn't do it. Sakura. Kiba looked at her face looking at his. She sniffed. I'm not done. She looked back at Tsunade. When I ended it, the wrong thing came out. I meant to tell him I was pregnant then. But I got scared at the last second and the wrong thing came out. When it did, I just ran. I didn't even let him say anything. Her head sank to the floor as she finished. Kiba's face was in total shock. That's what it was? I see, Tsunade replied. Obviously you two have had a serious miscommunication. She snapped her fingers and released the chakra bonds to their hands. Fix it. But not here, I have a lot of work to do. Go on. They both walked out of the office and out of the mansion. Kiba was slightly further ahead with his hands in his pocket, Akamaru between him and Sakura. Arf. Yeah, I know. He said back, still facing forward. What did he say? Sakura asked, sniffing as she wiped her face, trying to move whatever tears she had off her face since they were walking out into the open. He said we can't just walk out like nothing happened. He turned around, putting both his hands on her shoulders. We gotta talk, just like she said. She nodded. Okay. There was a bench right outside the main gate of the mansion. They took a seat looking ahead to the tiny amounts of traffic around the village. People going in and out of shops and some ninjas coming and going from missions. It was a regular day for almost everyone in the village. Almost. You know, it's funny, Kiba said. I can't even tell you're pregnant, you look just as thin as ever. She blushed. Well, that will change pretty soon. Heh. I bet. He locked his fingers together, placing his chin on top of it, leaning forward. She said nothing as she leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. He looked over and smiled, returning his attention to the front. So what are you going to do with the baby? He asked, breaking the silence. It's not all up to me, you know, she said, keeping her position on his shoulder. It's half yours too. He sat up, wrapping his arm around her as she leaned into his chest. Half mine. He sat there in thought for a few moments. My vote is to keep it. Don't worry, I'll help out. Even if we're just going to stay friends, I understand I don't want to be friends. She interrupted. A gleeful smile sewed across her face as she hugged him. Hearing you say you'll be there makes it all better. I wasn't kidding when I said the wrong thing in the Hokage's office. I didn't want to break up with you. To be honest, I thought you would break up with me when you found out about the baby. He shook his head. I grew up without a father. The very last thing I want is for my kids to grow up without one. Heck, that's half the reason why I wanted to be a ninja. I want to know my family will be safe by going out there. He sighed. Leaving, that's something that I would never do. Good, don't. She smiled again, leaning her head up, and kissed him softly. He smiled as he kissed her back. I don't think I could. Scene change, things were definitely looking up. He had her back, he was going to be a dad, he had his best friend, and he was enjoying a hot shower after a long afternoon session of sparring with Lee. Ugh. I think that jumpsuit is growing on me. I actually like wearing it now. He thought while scrubbing his hair in a lather with the shampoo he used. He washed it out and stepped out of the shower and dried himself off. Throwing on some pajamas, he headed downstairs for dinner. It was already set when he came down. His mother and sister were eating what looked and smelt like pork. He eagerly sat down and grabbed a plate before serving himself. He cleared his throat before addressing his mother. "I know what you meant now, Mom." "How did you find out?" "She told me." He laughed. "Well, she actually screamed it at me. We had a really long talk, but everything is okay again." "Oh, right." Hannah spoke up. "I heard about you and Sakura. I wish I could have been around more to watch out for you, little brother. But I guess I can't keep calling you little anymore when you're about to be a dad." "I'm not about to be one yet. She's barely going to be 2 months in," he replied. "What are you going to do about her then, pup?" his mother asked now more seriously. "What do you mean?" he asked. "Do you plan to marry her before the child is born?" He shrugged his shoulders. "I wouldn't be opposed to it, but we're both busy. It's just been you'll find time if you really want to." His mother interrupted. "May I guess?" "Yeah, Mom, you're right." He finished his dinner, picking up his plate and setting it in the sink. "I'm sorry I kept that from you for so long, son. I hope you understand now why it was up to you to find out and not have others take that right from you." He nodded. "I got it. Thanks again, Mom." "You too, sis." Scene change. She was lucky her parents had been going away as often as they were. She had no way of telling them about the baby. She didn't know if she could. She was just glad she was back with Kiba and he would be there for the baby, their baby. It felt great to say and think, knowing she wouldn't have to do this alone. "I wonder if the baby will have Kiba's little birthmarks?" she thought. It was a cute feature on him and it distinguished him pretty quickly to what clan he belonged to. She hummed to herself as she finished putting clothes away in her room and laid down on her back. Being this young, it doesn't feel wrong anymore, she thought out loud, stroking her stomach. Knowing he'll be there, that makes all the difference. Scene change. A few days later, Kiba got off training early. After coming home to an early evening shower, he set out with Akamaru. He wanted to pay his respects to Tsume after hearing about the duo that had killed him had been beaten. Luckily, the graves were all typically in the same area, just about a mile or so from the memorial stone. As it came into view, he didn't have to look very hard to find it. On the side of the grave with freshly laid flowers knelt Shikamaru. The sun was setting and he appeared to be in deep thought. Man, Tsume's death must have hit him the hardest. Might have even been worse than how Kurenai-sensei feels right now. He was like another father to him. "Don't worry," Shikamaru turned. His tears had long since dried and left a drought down his eyes. "I'm just enjoying the clouds at this point." He smiled and approached him, kneeling down to his side. "It's a nice sunset," Kiba said, smoothing the top of the grave with his hand. Shikamaru was still focusing on the horizon. The moment it all ended. That moment he threw the lighter into Haiden and sealed him in the Nara forest forever. He knew Tsume was with him. He was proud of him like he had always been. He always liked the view. That's half the reason why he put that bench swing in front of his house. Kiba just nodded. It was peaceful. Tsume in his death has taught many lessons only a few have already learned. For Kiba it was a lesson of family. For Shikamaru it was a lesson of the king. Something he didn't really understand, but he figured it was something only Tsume and Shikamaru would really understand. It's funny how people can teach us and tell us so much more after they're gone than when they're here with us, Kiba pointed out. Tsume's a hell of a teacher. How to be a ninja, how to fight, how to even start a family. Shikamaru looked over at Kiba before figuring it out. "Heh. You too, huh?" Kiba looked back at Shikamaru with a surprised look on his face. "Two?" He nodded. "Temari's about 4 months in. It's been a real drag, but she's agreed to come stay here until we decide what to do with the baby. Kenkuro's pretty excited about being an uncle. He even said he'd show the baby his puppets when it gets old enough. I think it'll scare him, but he's pretty set on it. And Gara, he doesn't look it, but he's happy. Kiba smiled back at the lazy genius. Shikamaru, I didn't know you had it in ya. You'll be a good father, Kiba. Shikamaru smiled back to him. Kiba patted him on the back. So will you, man? They said nothing as the sun finally drowned behind the horizon. The last glimpse of sun slowly faded as the two young father-to-bes paid their respects to Asuma. Asuma Sarutobi, beloved friend, teacher, fiancé, uncle and father. Find your king. Chapter 13. Sakura thought out loud, going through her closet and stopping at her old dress she wore while she was still with Team 7. Well, when Team 7 was still Team 7. I haven't worn this in a while. Hopefully he likes it. Tonight Sakura was going to officially meet Kiba's mother and sister. He assured her they would love her since she is carrying his child, but she was naturally paranoid of solid first impressions. She felt her first meet with his mother at the hospital was too sudden to count. Her old dress still fit her, much to her surprise. For being 3 months pregnant, it hardly shows on her at all. Sometimes she wonders if she even is. Turning to the side to look at herself in the mirror, she could see a very slight curve at the end of her stomach. The dress covered it up enough to where people still couldn't tell unless they already knew. In this case only Tsunade, Kiba's family, Ino, and of course Kiba knew. She'd have to tell Naruto eventually, being that she has been put on leave from missions until after the baby's born. She looked like her old self 3 years ago minus the long hair. It was nice to dress up despite the fact she never used any makeup or did anything fancy with her. Her clothes were enough. She picked up a picture off of her desk. It was one of her, Kiba and Akamaru, from a few weeks ago. Akamaru was in the middle and her and Kiba were both kissing the sides of his cheeks, Sakura on the right and Kiba on the left. Akamaru had his head tilted to the side as if he were confused on what was going on. It was her favorite picture of them thus far. Knock 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 knock, coming. She shouted from her room. After looking at herself one more time, she went downstairs to open the door. Upon opening, there stood Kiba holding a bouquet of 12 red roses with Akamaru right at his side as usual. With a happy giggle, she quickly hugged her boyfriend in thankfulness of the gift. Let's put these upstairs. I have a vase there so they can get water. Kiba nodded. Sounds good. The three of them made their way up to her room and Kiba and Akamaru sat on her bed while she went downstairs to fill the vase with water. Good call, boy. Kiba thanked his friend, ruffling the top of his head. Arf. Well, I didn't think about it. I forgot Ino's flower shop was on the way to Sakura's. He looked at Akamaru, putting his hands to the sides of his face as they made eye contact. That's why I got you, buddy. Gotta have some brains around here to go with the brawn. Akamaru whimpered at his response. Sure, he was a dog, but even he knew little things like that were nice to bring. Okay, I'm Arie, Kiba? Sakura stopped looking at Kiba's staring contest between Akamaru. What are you doing with Akamaru? Oh. He snapped back to look at her. Sorry, we were just talking. She quirked her eyebrows at his response. Sure, anyway, I'm ready to go when you are. She walked past him and placed the vase filled with water and the freshly cut roses at her window. A simple blue glass vase that had the water up about 3/4 of the way. They look nice. He commented. She turned and kissed him. All thanks to you. Well, Ino had something to do with the flowers, I just picked them up. He scratched his head. Arf. And Akamaru may have played a part in it also. She smiled. Either way, it was thoughtful and really sweet. He grinned as he pulled her into a deep kiss for a few moments before letting her go. No, he said, taking a breath. That was sweet. She shook her head. Honestly, I don't know how you can be so clever. She rolled her eyes before making her way out of the room. He shrugged his shoulders. Who knows? Scene change, with Sakura riding Akamaru while Kiba walked alongside. The positive attention came recollecting back from when it was scarce not more than a few weeks ago. It was cool and not a cloud in the sky. Perfect early spring weather. At the moment, the village had a small amount of people walking by. Most of the children were either at home or at the academy, and the adults were typically at work, save the few that were off or were actual ninjas making their way around town. At the intersection they were to turn, a large figure appeared to their left. Long spiky white hair in a long ponytail, a sizable red vest and a forest green outfit appeared heading towards them from that side. Master Jiraiya? Sakura asked with a smile. Well, look at what we have here, he said, noticing her on top of Akamaru. She doesn't look hurt. Are you two on a date or something? He sheepishly asked to brighten the mood. Kiba scratched the back of his head. We've been together for a while, Master Jiraiya. Sakura nodded. A few months. Jiraiya crossed his arms. I see. Well, you can't blame an old man for asking. I wasn't here for a good few months either until just recently. Sakura looked at him again. He didn't look like he was staying for very long either. Are you leaving again, Master Jiraiya? He nodded, his arms still crossed. I'm on an important mission to gather information. Very dangerous, very classified, I'm afraid. Both of them, including Akamaru, raised their eyebrows in suspicion. Didn't Naruto call this guy a super pervert or something? Kiba thought. Great, more research, thought Sakura. Goddamn, I'm hungry, can we just go? Thought Akamaru, letting out a simple bark. If only this mission were to conduct more research. I have to get to the Hidden Rain Village. If this Akatsuki leader is really there, maybe I can get Hanzo to help me take him down. Either way, I can't come back empty-handed. This information is absolutely key. Jiraiya thought to himself as he made his way past them. I had better get going, he said before stopping. By the way, he turned around. Congratulations, Sakura. Sakura was in a surprising amount of shock. How do you, dear? I'm a man who takes great pride in his research. I can tell when a woman has conceived fairly quickly. He looks over at Kiba. I guess that makes you the father then? Kiba nodded. Very nice. It's such a great thing to see the young generation already branching out and finding their love, and so soon as well. Hopefully I don't take too long on this mission. It'd be great to see the baby along with Asuma's son. He reached into his pocket to pull out a small pile of books covered by a simple handkerchief, in which he handed to Kiba. I know I typically only authorize these books to people over the age of 18, but you're a soon-to-be father. That's already quite adult in my opinion. Kiba's eyes fluttered as he saw the book Jiraiya had handed him. Are those? Jiraiya nodded. The entire series. All 3 make-out books. Signed by me. Oh no, Kiba, not you too. Sakura thought in despair at the sight of Kiba turning into another Kakashi. The vivid image of him standing at a street corner with Kakashi reading struck her mind, as soon after he would probably also start wearing a mask and end up looking almost just like him. What is it with that book series? Naruto said it was so boring. Then again, that is Naruto. Consider it a present for the proud parents-to-be. He happily exclaimed. Gee, you really shouldn't have. Sakura sarcastically remarked, rolling her eyes. Well, I best be going. I got a lot of work to do. Take care. Jiraiya waved as he made his way towards the main gate. Kiba kept his wide grin as he began to open the first book, but had it snatched out of his hands along with the other 2 by Sakura. Hey! Why did you're not 18 yet? You can't be reading it. So? The author of the series just now told me I was plenty adult to him. She sighed. Is the author the law too? Kiba looked at the ground in defeat. Fiyin. Scene change. Finally making their way to his home, Kiba knocked on the door, and after a few moments his sister came to answer the door. Hana? He asked. What? She asked, confused, noticing Sakura. Hi, Sakura. Please come in. Sakura got off Akamaru as she shook her hand and entered the home. I just didn't know you had the day off. Kiba replied, walking in as well. She shrugged her shoulders. Things have been pretty easy lately, so I've been at home a lot more. Makes sense. He said. Where's Mom? She's cooking right now. I was helping her until you guys showed up. Go ahead and relax, dinner should be ready soon. They separated as Kiba took Sakura on a small tour around the house. He was being modest when he said his house was big. It was almost a mansion. A wide two-story house, though surprisingly not a lot of rooms. Kiba said it was mostly dedicated to outside. Inuzukas were natural breeders for when they had children, so they could have the dog ready for the child since dogs gave birth much quicker than humans. Sakura looked down at her stomach. Does that mean? Kiba smiled as he nodded his head. Yep. Boy or girl, they'll get their neen dog when they reach the age just like all of us. Just like me, he thought as his mind reminisced. Flashback, he was just a boy. No younger than 10 maybe. His mother and sister brought him out to the fields for his birthday to give him his present. He never understood why his mother and sister always had their dogs with them. He just assumed they really liked dogs. Are you ready for your present, son? Tsume asked. Kiba turned around. Yeah. Where is it? Tsume whistled sharply and a small thin white puppy made its way out of the patch of yellow flowers. He walked till he was about 5 feet away from Kiba and started giving small barks to him, occasionally pausing to just simply wag his tail. Kiba looked surprised at what was in front of him. He quickly turned around to face his mom. Mom, is that dog? His name is Akamaru, she said. And from now on you'll be looking after him. Kiba turned back to face Akamaru, kneeling down to get closer to eye level with him. He stuck his hand out to see what Akamaru would do. After the puppy licked his hand, he giggled at the affection and picked Akamaru up, who wasn't barking much anymore, simply wagging his tail. I'm Kiba. Nice to meet you, Akamaru. Arf. He laughed at his high squeaky bark, caught completely off guard when Akamaru randomly urinated on Kiba's face. You've done it now, you little brat. He growled. But he couldn't stay mad as he wiped the urine off his face as Akamaru's face remained completely still, barking only one more time, causing him to forget all about what had happened and laughed at him. End flashback. You okay? Sakura asked, shaking his arm lightly. Huh? Kiba snapped back. Oh, sorry. I guess I sort of dazed out for a second. He turned to Sakura and smiled. He placed his hand on her stomach, slowly smoothing around the area where the baby was forming. Something about the small bump was so beautiful. Not in her appearance, but in the sense that their love was beginning to create something he never even thought he would experience for several years to come. He wasn't about to complain, though. What do you think it will be? He asked. She shrugged her shoulders. I don't know. But we'll love him or her no matter what, won't we? He looked back up at her, keeping his hand on her stomach. Yeah, we will. Scene change. Dinner was a very good turnout. Though not yet complete, Sakura seemed to be getting along quite well with Hana and Tsume. Kiba had already warned her about Tsume being a bit wild about certain things, and it certainly showed. It particularly came out when she had been drinking. And when I came down, he was gone. Can you believe that? Hana told me he wanted to go on a real mission with Akamaru to go fight missing neens. Ah, come on, Mom, Kiba pouted as he listened to the embarrassing stories being told. What? It was because of that you were enrolled into the academy that next semester. I knew at that point my boy had the energy, the ambition, maybe not the brains, but Mom. He growled at her. Oh, hush, pup. It's all a compliment. You see, Sakura, I know you were top of your hit class. There's no doubt in my mind you're a very hick intelligent girl. She sat back, folding her arms. If the baby really is half you and half my son, it'll be the hick perfect combination. She laughed at her own theory. Kiba just gave up. Hana shook her head before taking away the near-empty bottle of sake on the table. She walked by Sakura whispering, sorry, she gets like this whenever she drinks. To which Sakura merely giggled and nodded. I think I'm done. Thanks for dinner, Mom. Kiba got up, picking his and Sakura's empty plates up, taking them to the sink. Oh yeah, anytime. She replied, still obviously inebriated from the amount of alcohol she consumed so quickly. Let's go up to my room, he whispered to her. My mom's not like most drunks where she calms down after a while. She actually gets worse. She nodded as she followed him upstairs to his room. She was surprised how organized his room was. She figured Kiba just threw his clothes on the floor and would go to sleep and continue the process until he had a nasty heap of clothes. But she was obviously wrong. It was well kept together aside from a few CDs lying on his bed. Man, I'm stuffed. Kiba patted his stomach, laying down on his bed, moving over to the side and looking over at Sakura in the hopes she'd join him, which she did, sitting at the edge. Sakura looked over to see the guitar she had heard about him playing leaning against the wall next to the bed. The high E string had snapped out of place, obviously telling her he had been playing recently. /N for those who aren't really aware of the strings on the guitar, the high E string is the very thin string on the end of the guitar. The thinnest one, actually. Metallica, he said. She looked at him. What? I was playing a song by that band I was telling you about. It's called Phantom Lord, off their first album, and during the solo I guess the strings were just too old, so it broke on me. She smirked at the sight of the string literally flapping off the neck during the song. It must have been a real buzzkill. You're so rough, you know that? He grinned, picking himself up just enough to wrap his arms around her chest. You haven't seen rough yet? She smirked as she realized what she just dug herself into, leaning her head back and kissing him. Nope. I haven't. Akamaru knew how to take a hint. He quietly walked outside the room, using his tail to leverage the door behind him. He was happy to give them their time alone. Sakura stood up and walked over to the almost closed door, latching it shut. She removed her headband and placed it onto his desk next to his. He was sitting on the bed waiting for her to come back. When she did, she sat on his lap facing forward with her legs wrapped around his waist. Go easy on me, though. She ran her fingers through his hair. He smiled at her. Even now, with testosterone flooding his veins like a raging storm, he couldn't help but admire her. She was kind, beautiful, and about the right amount of violent for him to handle. Then again, next to his mother, no other woman really scared him to the point where he would want to hide. And she was all his. He wondered how his luck had managed to bring someone like her into his life, let alone get him to the point of where he was with her. It was perfect. Everything he ever wanted in anyone was right in his arms. He said nothing as he kissed her, moving his hands up to her cheeks, laying back, bringing her on top of him. Sakura, he stopped for a second. This isn't gonna hurt the baby, is it? She shook her head, kissing his forehead. I'm not far enough for it to get hurt during, you know. She stroked one of his birthmarks. Besides, if our baby is anything like you, it'll be tough. I think we'll be okay. He grinned but was relieved that the child would be all right. Yeah, you're right. Scene change. A few days had passed since Sakura met Kiba's family. After brushing her hair, she looked back over at the picture of her Kiba and Akamaru before heading to the hospital. Poor Akamaru, so confused. She laughed. Suddenly, without warning, the glass in the frame cracked, specifically over Akamaru and Kiba. What? She thought out loud. I just bought that frame too. But she knew the superstition of it being a bad omen. She just chose to not believe it. She gave one last look in her room before heading off to the hospital. Scene change. Kiba never felt like more of a man at this point. Everything he felt was in the palm of his hands. With Team Guy away on a mission, he had plenty of time to himself, and for once he wasn't bored with it. He knew what he was going to do today. He took his savings from his past missions and knew just what he was going to buy. His mother was right about one thing: if you want to get married, you'll make time for it if you really want to. Walking into the jeweler's, he immediately felt out of place. High quality and high status looking people were buying or getting their own diamonds and other such gems appraised to be sold or traded for other items, and here walked in this scruffy kid with a big white dog who looked like they had made the wrong turn into the wrong store. Jesus, he thought. Some of the clothes these guys are wearing are probably worth more than what I make on a mission. Hello, sir. The greeter said to him. How can I help? Oh, yeah. I'm trying to find an engagement ring for my girlfriend, but I'm not sure how far my money will. Oh no. It's quite okay. If you'll just follow me. She guided him to a specific section where most engagement rings were assorted. These are mostly for display, she pointed out. But we have several sizes in the back. Is there anything in particular you were looking for? Kiba looked around. All the rings seemed so out of his league. All the money he brought would be gone in a jiffy if he bought one today. He figured at the very least he could make a down payment and pay the rest off within his next few missions. Sir, if I may, she got his attention. We're having a clearance sale since we need to make room for Gold Month. There's a 25% knockoff rings and bracelets. Oh wow, really? He looked up at her. Yes. I can probably buy any of these rings then and still have money to grab some food afterwards. Arf. Yeah, I'm looking, boy. Maybe I can help you find what you are looking for? She asked. Oh yeah. He thought to himself. March 28th. That's aquamarine. You're referring to birthstones, am I right? Kiba nodded. Yeah. That's my girlfriend's birthday. The greeter pointed out to a small row of rings sporting said birthstone. Kiba didn't want to overdo it with the amount of decoration, but he didn't want to make it just plain. He settled for a simple but decorative ring featuring an oval in the middle with the birthstone with two smaller shapes on each corresponding side. That's a wonderful choice, sir. What size ring would you like so I can check if we have it? What? Fuck. I forgot about that. And she's pregnant too. She's only gonna get bigger. Aw man. Guess I'm going out on a limb here. He glanced at Akamaru, who just scratched his ear. 4. Yeah. We'll go with 4 for right now. You don't know, do you? She asked. Nope. No clue. She giggled at his honesty. Well, if the size doesn't fit, we can always take it back and resize it. Perfect. Finally, after purchasing the ring and still holding a bit of money in his wallet, he proudly walked down the road back home. He needed to keep that ring safe in case anything happened while he was out today. But he stopped in his tracks. Something smelt wrong. He smelled cold dry skin. A chill went down his spine as him and Akamaru looked at each other before rushing home. He had hoped his mother would have an answer for this. Scene change. Just outside the gates of the village, for Chunin ninja stood outside an outpost discussing their findings over scanning the perimeter. 3 of them stood side to side while the 4th, most likely the leader, spoke up. Well, I guess we better get going. As he turned, his face went to shock as he stared another figure in the face. He quickly jumped back, assuming a defensive stance. Now at a better view, he saw it at a better angle. Short spiky orange hair, 6 piercings along its nose with 7 on each ear. His eyes were disturbing. Ripple-like patterns around the pupil with a light purple iris and sclera. Before he could take any sort of action, the figure sprung a chakra disruptor blade and quickly impaled the leader, killing him on impact. The other 3 quickly jumped away to prepare for a fight. That robe, is he from the Akatsuki? Thought one of the ninja. The 2 other Chunins with him quickly jumped up and came down, grabbing hold of the man in an attempt to restrain him. One of them looked back at the other ninja. Go. He said. Yeah. I gotta tell the Hokage this. Before he could take more than a couple of steps, the 2 others who were helping him were quickly tossed away. What was that? He attempted to run again but couldn't. Something was pulling him towards the man. Slowly he was dragged to about 5 feet away, and before he could make a fist to throw, the man retracted another disruptor blade from his left arm this time and impaled the last of the 4 ninja, killing him instantly. He looked up towards the great wall surrounding the village. No emotion escaped this man's face as he said, "The time has come." Seconds later he was joined by 6 other individuals. 5 bore a striking resemblance to him. The first was a short young girl. She had orange hair tied together in a sort of onion-like bun at the top of the head with spikes of hair protruding out of it. She also had 1 stud above the nose, studs on either side of the neck, a row of studs vertically down each cheek, and a stud below each stud on the neck. The second was a man. He also had orange hair which was tied in a short ponytail. He had small spike piercings covering its entire bottom lip, 2 vertical spike studs on the front of his nose, 2 spike studs on each cheek, and a metal bar going through each ear. The third was another man. He had long loose orange hair flowing to the top of his chest. He had multiple piercings, including a diagonal bar through its nose, 2 circular studs in a vertical row on each of its cheeks, 2 studs placed horizontally on its chin, and a stud on each of its shoulders near its neck. The fourth appeared to be a man but had an odd appearance about him. He had a vertical ring piercing on its nose, 6 spike studs all around its head, 3 studs on the top and bottom of each of its 6 arms, an enormous cylindrical stud on its chin, and 2 vertical studs on each of its upper cheeks. The most peculiar trait about this one was its very, very thick neck and bald head, quickly distinguishing him from everybody else. The fifth and final resembling member looked the most like the first figure who appeared and killed the ninja. He had a spiky mop of orange hair and had a fairly stocky, muscular appearance. He had multiple body piercings like the others, such as a circular stud on the bridge of its nose, a diagonal row of studs on each of its cheeks, and 3 spike piercings in each of its ears. All 6 of these figures all possessed the same rippled-like eyes, colors and all. The last person standing with them looked nothing like the other 6 but was an associate dictated by her matching black cloak with the red clouds painted on. She had blue hair and amber eyes. A very tired and neutral face with 1 simple piercing under her bottom lip. On the right side of her head above her ear she wore a light blue paper flower. The first of them finally spoke up. From here on we will be splitting into 2 teams. Diversion and search. He turned to face them. Diversion will be made up of Azura, animal, and Preta. Human, and Naraka. He said before turning back around to face the wall still so far away. Conan, you're with the search team. I know. She stoically replied. The Deva Path further examined the village. The Hidden Leaf Village is surrounded by a sphere that covers aerial and underground detection immediately. Which means anyone who enters without permission is detected immediately, Conan pointed out. The Deva Path nodded. As planned, we shall send in the animal path into the aerial place. We will confuse the enemy by not giving them an accurate count. Wait for her summoning. I was told Itachi and Kisame infiltrated without much trouble. Conan said. Itachi was once an umbu for the leaf. He knew the passcodes to get in. I have my own way of doing things. The Azura path grabbed the animal path and giving it a powerful throw launched it into the air towards the village. Starting here the world will know pain. Chapter 14. You smell that, Akamaru? Kiba asked while they were still running towards home. Arf. Arf. Yeah, I know. I don't like this. After he reached home he opened the door, much to his surprise that it was unlocked. It was completely empty, as were the streets when he got closer. Where the hell did everybody go? Making his way over to the dining room table there was a note. Picking it up he quickly read through it. Kiba, go to the mortuary as soon as you read this. The village is under attack. Hannah is safe. I'll explain when you get here. Hurry. Mom under attack? He quickly ran outside. He took a moment to breathe in the air and he could immediately pick up the smell of shrapnel, fire and blood. He was so far away from where the attack must have started he must not have heard the beginning of it. Sakura. He turned to Akamaru, who was ready to go. Come on. Scene change. It was something completely out of a nightmare. Large creatures, centipedes especially, were smashing buildings and caving in shelters used to protect civilians. Panic was spreading, and with no alarm to prepare them for the attack, many citizens were taking matters into their own hands. Please. Someone help me. Cried a young girl who had tripped. A piece of rubble was pinning her foot down, keeping her from moving. The people around her just kept running. At this point the desperate need to survive was overcoming even the most civilized of the regular folk in the village, as those who fell were left to die while those who could run kept running. Tammy. An older woman yelled, running towards the child. Grandma, I can't move. I can't move, help me. She cried as her struggling proved futile, which the large insect noticed and began closing in for the kill. The centipede was quickly stopped as a nimble Sakura quickly jumped in, smashing into the face of the insect, killing it from mere bone cave-in. Immediately she focused on the girl who was still stuck, lifting the rock off immediately. Don't worry, your wounds don't appear to be too deep. she said, already fusing in her chakra to begin sewing up her wounds. Thank you, the girl said. Sakura. Sakura looked up to see 3 other ninjas along with Irika quickly coming to their aid. Irika-sensei. She finally finished healing the girl and lifted her up. What's going on? What is this? I don't know, but someone is attacking the village. We've already reported this to Lady Tsunade. Someone's attacking the village? But a sudden explosion close by cut off her thoughts. Come on, Irika. We gotta go, called one of the ninjas. Right. He ran towards them. Sakura. He turned around. Get to the shelter. It's filled with injured. Go right now. And with that he and the other ninja took off to try and assist the situation. Okay. As she looked on, it began to set in. Her home, her friends, the places she would visit, her home was all falling apart. Crumbling before her very eyes, and there was nothing she could do about it. Mississippi, the girl pulled on her skirt. Sakura knelt down next to her. Don't worry. We have Lady Hokage on our side. She tried smiling, and luckily it gave the girl hope as she escorted them to the shelter. Kiba, I hope you're okay. Scene change, it's definitely him. Kuramaru said softly. It seems he's trying to recover something from the body Master Jiraiya sent us. Good, he hasn't noticed us yet. Tsume whispered. How do you want to handle this? He already has what he came for. Chances are he'll want a way out. If the reports are correct, he can't take much physical punishment. That means we have to hit him quick or seal his chances of escape. I'm ready, Kuramaru said. Tsume nodded as they prepared for their attack. The Preda path stood above the old animal path with what appeared to be all the metal used in his piercings that all the others had within them. The entire staff was lying on the floor, dead or dying. He quickly examined the room once more before deciding to move. His attention was gathered to the sound of a tin can rolling across the floor. Unfortunately, the sound was of a flashbang grenade, and within a moment's notice it was set off, crippling its field of vision. Fong over Fong! Shouted Tsume as her and Kuramaru flew towards him. Just in the nick of time, the Preda path quickly picked the body of the animal path up off the table and shielded itself from the attack, only slamming him into the wall instead of possibly being ripped to shreds. The elder duo jumped back, each on all fours, ready to strike again, following his movements and noticing it had retreated to the top corner of the room facing downward. Kiba finally caught up with them in time, following their scent, riding Akamaru. Ma, above you. Arf. I know, she replied, keeping herself focused. Still on Akamaru, Kiba rushed up to their side as Akamaru readied himself to attack as well. He used the corpse as a shield, Kuramaru pointed out. Tsume smirked. I figured as much. Looks like the reports were right, physical attacks seemed to be his weakness. Kiba couldn't hold back his grin. The perfect match up for one of the 6 enemies they had heard about. Then we, the Inuzuka clan, could not have asked for a better opponent. He quickly glanced over to his mother, who was still focusing on the path still planted on the top of the wall. Ma, let's put this guy away in one hit. Hold it, Kiba. Huh? He looked surprised. This is one of the 6 who brought Lord Jiraiya down. We're going to be cautious yet bold. She stood up, getting ready to attack or prevent him from escaping. I expect you to fill in for Hannah, who has gone on to protect the puppies. Kiba looked over at his mother, a little offended. Seriously? It's always Hannah, this Hannah, that Hannah fucking Hannah. Give me a break here, Mom. Alright, he finally responded. Scene change, falling pieces of paper littered the alleyways as injured shinobi were slowly being healed by the divided parts of Katsuyu. 4 against 1 were good odds. Conan stood at a dead-end lock against 4 Aburim clan members who were ready to fight. Shino and his father stood ready to attack any second. Their cool and unfazed appearances were something difficult to describe. It would be like trying to describe colors to one who could not see. Dark sunglasses and a large chin cover shielded them from any form of physical emotion being brought out. Unfortunately, their opponent was not one who frightened easily. "Shino, we're going to exterminate her with our full power," said his father. Scene change. Miles away, Team Guy had just finished up a mission. Just recently, however, Guy and Niji began noticing serious suggestions coming from the amount of birds fleeing from the direction of the village. "I'm so hungry," pouted Tenten. "Let's rest a bit, we're all tired from the mission." Guy's vision still focused in the direction of the village. "What is going on? What's the matter, Guy-sensei?" asked Lee. "Have you all noticed the large amount of birds heading from the direction of the village? It's almost if they were fleeing." Niji nodded. "I have the same feeling as well. We should hurry back to the village." "Yes," agreed. "Come on, we're going," Guy said, and the team quickly began their trek back to the village in the hopes their worst feelings would not become truth. Scene change. Still in a standoff, the two Inuzukas finally came to a decision. "Kiba will go with that technique." "Yeah, I got it, no sweat." He gave a heavy pat to Akamaru's side. "Let's do it, Akamaru." "Arf." Kiba quickly rushed up the wall towards the Preda path, but it quickly jumped out of the way. "Dynamic marking," he shouted as Akamaru sprayed the wall towards the path in a diagonal fashion. It tried to swipe away the urine, but it was caught in his sleeve, marking him just like Kiba wanted. Tsume took the chance to attack, and the Preda path jumped out of the way behind a table. She tossed a couple of kunai knives at it, only for him to flip the table back to block the knives jumping through the window in an attempt to flee. "You won't get away," Tsume yelled as her and Kuramaru gave chase. Kiba was quick to follow but stopped as he noticed the morticians in such bad condition. "Do not worry. I will heal these two," Katsuyu said. "All right, looks like the Hokage's starting to heal the citizens. Guess I can take off then." "Got it, thanks," he replied, chasing after the Preda path scent. Akamaru jumped through a window, landing on a lower rooftop and immediately running towards the direction of the scent. "You can't escape. Not as long as you have Akamaru's scent on you." Scene change. Planning, observing. That's what Shibi and his son were doing as they were watching this young woman in front of them. "This isn't pain," Shino stated. "Why?" "Because her characteristics differ from what we've been told." "Stay alert," his father said. "Of course. I won't let my guard down for anyone. Spending a long time standing still against one Aburame is already a bad idea. Do it against four and you're really asking for trouble." Conan learned that quickly as she looked up to find herself under a black wave of beetles which immediately engulfed her. A moment later, a small wave of papers were sent flying from the cloud of beetles. "What?" Shibi said. When he looked up, he saw what had happened. Dozens of copies of her were perched from all different sides in front of them. "Paper clones," he announced. The clones all jumped, charging towards the four bug users. "It doesn't matter how many paper clones she uses, our beetles will devour every single one of them," Shino proudly stated. Unfortunately, this was intentional. As the clones drew closer, Shibi picked up a peculiar scent about them. "Gunpowder. That smell, Shino, everyone get away." And just before the clones crashed into the ground to kill them, the four members scattered away from the concentration. Shino jumped up, landing on top of a roof with a flagpole staff that didn't bear a flag. The paper clones were armed with paper bombs from the start, he said right before another clone rushed towards him. He jumped out of the way in time just before the explosion did some serious damage to him. He landed back down in front of where the highest concentration of clone bombs were. It was a pool of arson and burning paper as the real Conan finally emerged, stepping through the paper with little fear as she slowly approached them. "The real one saturated herself in water," he said as his father joined him. "She used a weakness to gain an advantage," his father added on. "This one is strong." Scene change. All these people, I can't heal all these people, Sakura thought to herself. The shelter was crowded with people. Everyone was hurt and her chakra was starting to run dangerously low. If she kept it up, the baby itself would start to suffer, but she knew she couldn't just let these people sit and not provide some sort of medical attention. "Sakura." A female voice called. She turned to find Kurenai being carried by Shikamaru on his shoulder. Shikamaru. Kurenai-sensei. She quickly ran over to them, helping Kurenai to a cot that was being used by everyone else. Are you okay? We should check your vitals. I'm okay, Sakura. I got separated from my team, then Shikamaru found me and saved me from one of those monsters that was destroying everything. Wait, Kurenai-sensei, have you seen Kiba at all? She shook her head. Kiba and Tsume went to go fight one of the pains that went to the morgue. Her eyes suddenly opened wide with shock and fear. Are you sure? Shikamaru nodded. We ran into Kiba's mom on the way over here. We haven't actually seen Kiba though. Without saying anything, Sakura ran towards the door, heading outside and making a left down the road. Kiba, what are you thinking? You can't do this by yourself. I have to find him, I can't lose someone else. She ran for minutes, time becoming nothing to her as she checked to see if maybe he had gotten the message of where to go and she could meet him and help him find the shelter. All of a sudden she stopped. Frozen. All she could do is breathe and sweat as a strong gravitational force slowly dragged her until she finally stopped. When she was finally forced into turning around, she was staring the Deva path right in the face. Are you Sakura Haruno? Shaking with pure fear, she nodded her head, hoping that cooperating might give her a chance to break free. Where's the Nine Tails? He asked, staring directly into her eyes, drawing pain and fear out by mere looks alone. I don't know. She said with a broken voice as fearful tears flooded her face, pouring onto the destroyed soil that was once considered a road. I swear I don't know. His gravitational grip tightened as she winced in pain from the pressure. She could feel herself bleeding from the inside now. She needed to do something fast. I will not ask again. Speak or I shall pass judgment. The grip on his pole weakened to where she could back away quickly, backing up but tripping and falling down, staring at him less than 10 feet away from him. He slowly approached her, extended a chakra disruptor blade from his right sleeve and stood over her. If you will not speak, then I shall pass judgment. He loomed over her, pulling his arm back, aiming directly at her chest. No pain. Chapter 15. They lost him. Tsume and Kuramaru were literally about to catch him and he vanished. His scent did anyway. Kiba, head east. Tsume said while heading west. Kiba obeyed, heading towards the direction instructed. He stopped when he picked up a strong combination of scents. What is that? Gunpowder, paper, blood, bugs? No. Shino. Hold on, man. Kiba frantically rushed, jumping off Akamaru, sprinting further ahead of him at this point. Scene change, the scent laid strongest here, but it also faded away considerably. What he saw terrified him. Tiny craters, thousands upon thousands of beetles scattered across the ground, with 2 Aburim clan members lying dead across the pavement. Hundreds of sheets of blank pieces of paper flew about, which he didn't understand. He continued down the alleyway, hearing short breaths, and finally stopped at a sight he wasn't ready for. There in the furthest corner of the alley sat Shino. His chin cover had been torn away, showing his mouth, with his jacket that usually covered his head ripped to shreds, keeping only the sleeves on. He had shrapnel wounds covering his chest and legs. Several areas of his exposed skin were charred and bleeding, indicating he suffered from a burn or explosion of some type. Shino. Kiba quickly ran over to him, kneeling down to check for a pulse. His breaths were taking long, powerful wheezes now. That you, Kiba? Kiba took his hand in his, letting him know he was there. Yeah, man. I'm here. It's me. For as long as he had known Shino, he'd never seen him so hurt after a fight. He had never even seen him get hit ever. He's not gonna make it. He's got wounds everywhere. Damn it. What the hell happened here? There's another one with them. Not a pain. It's a woman. Blue hair with shut the fuck up, Shino. He yelled out of sadness. Stop talking. You need to save your strength. He tried to pick him up, but Shino stopped him. Stop, it's okay, Kiba. Kiba was beyond shock. He's never seen anyone die in front of him. Not a friend, not anyone. All he could do was cry and hold his friend's hand. I got a secret it's not really worth keeping anymore since I'm pretty much done in. Shino, stop saying that. You're gonna be okay. You'll take my glasses off, Kiba. His eyes opened wide. For as long as he's known him, Shino has never taken his glasses off. He wasn't even sure what color eyes he had. He complied, slowly letting go of his hand and taking his sunglasses off, setting them to the ground. Shino looked like a completely different person. Tall brown hair, light brown eyes that could probably get the attention of any girl he wanted, and his face was normal. You know, you don't look half bad, buddy, he said, trying to force a smile. Shino gave a rare smirk and a faint chuckle, followed by a cough where blood slowly left his lips in the aftermath. I'm a hypocrite, Kiba. He looked at him. Was Shino crying? What do you mean? Think back, do you remember when the Kazekage was rescued? And I told you to not keep how you feel in the dark. He nodded. Yeah, man. I remember everything you tell me, even if I don't act like I do. He smiled again, this rarity becoming quite popular in the final moments of the young Aburame. I'm horrible at taking my own advice. What do you mean by that? Hey, you never would have guessed how much I would have liked to have told Hinata how I really felt about her. Kiba's face went white with surprise. Hinata? Are you serious? Surprise, isn't it? I always tried to help her out. You know, when you guys tried to get Sasuke back, I made a promise to myself to help as much as I can. I know I may seem like a creep and a guy who loves bugs too much, but that's not true, Shino. Stop saying that. He raised his voice to him. Do you have any idea how much stronger you've made me? And Akamaru? And Hinata, of all people? She looks up to you, man. You make her feel strong, safe in more ways than you know. A real warm smile escaped the bug user's face as another tear fell from his eye. Sorry, Kiba, I wish I was as determined as you. Maybe then things would have been different. Kiba couldn't stop himself. Shino was dying right in front of him, and all he was doing was holding his hand. He needed Sakura not just for her but so she could heal him. Shino, we can make it, man. When this is all done, I'll set you guys up, I swear. One condition though. He coughed. What's that? Kiba smiled, giving a small laugh behind his tears and broken voice. You gotta promise me you'll keep your sunglasses off for her and show her your face. Shino gave a low chuckle to it. That sounds fair, yeah. That sounds good. Kiba just watched him. Something about this Shino, no glasses, no jackets, was peaceful. Relaxing. Whatever people say, Kiba, you're an amazing ninja. Hey man, he sniffed. So are you. Hell, you're better than I am. Heh, I don't know about that. If you stopped and thought about what to do a few steps ahead, you could be better than everyone. He had to stop due to his coughing worsening. Please keep an eye out on her, for his cough worsened even more as darker blood splattered onto Kiba's own jacket. Tell her I'm sorry, I couldn't bring myself to confess. Now I know how she feels about Naruto, that awfully shy feeling. Hey, stop that. You're going to tell her yourself, okay? We're gonna get through this, Shino. You and me. Just like we always do. And we'll all go out on a double date and have way too much to drink, and we'll laugh about the old times when we were just stupid little genin. He gathered up enough strength to keep a full, steady smile on his face. I know it never seemed like it at first, but you're a good friend and a good man. Nobody can take that away from you. I envy it, Kiba. Don't make the same mistake I did. Not now, not ever. Say what you feel. Don't be scared, Kiba, he gasped as he saw it happen before his very eyes. His grip loosened and his hand sunk to the floor. His eyes were half open and a smile was pasted across his face, almost as if he had smiled his whole life and it had been stuck for forever. His head hung itself down forward as he finally passed. He reached for his eyes and closed them. He left his smile across his face as he reached for his cheek with his hand. Goodbye, Shino. You were my best friend. I know it never showed. He finally broke, falling to both his knees as his tears raged onto the ground below. But it's true. I swear it's true and I'm so sorry I never spent as much time with you as I should have. Shino, I'm sorry, man. I'm so sorry, man. There was no more need for words. Only reflection. He stayed with his body limp on his knees staring at his lifeless friend, wishing he would wake up, wishing he would tell him this was an awful joke, wishing he would tell him he was going to be okay so that way they could win this thing. Drive these Akatsuki out of their village forever. He looked over at Akamaru. Taking in a deep breath, he was able to distinguish the smells within the area. I smell Sakura. She's close and I smell something else with her I don't like. Let's go. One last time he looked over at Shino. I'll make this right, buddy. Don't you worry, I'll make these bastards pay. You and me. We'll do it. And with that they were gone, leaving Shino's smiling body to rest in the corner of the alley in his final happiness. Scene change. If you will not speak, then I shall pass judgment. He loomed over her, pulling his arm back, aiming directly at her chest. No pain. He thrusted his blade down to her chest. Sakura closed her eyes, fearing the end. She never found Kiba. The baby would never be born. She would never get to build her home and family the way she dreamed. It was all coming to an end with a single stab. Clank, she opened her eyes. The blade was gone. It wasn't near her. When she fully opened them, she saw an all too familiar figure in black standing in front of her. His kunai was drawn, holding the disruptor blade in its place, not budging in the slightest. Painhe, what an interesting name. Kiba? He turned his head to see her. His tears had since dried but carried the stains of Shino's blood on his face and on various parts of his jacket. The one and only. The Devapath merely gave a blank expression as he broke away from the lock between his knife, slashing forward trying to hit him. Kiba caught it with little effort, holding it in place. After everything you've done to us, he said in a low growl. You think we're just going to let you come in and do as you please? Kill who you please? His hands gripped the blade harder, snapping it in half. Akamaru nudged his nose in front of Sakura, trying to get her to get on him so they could move. You need to move, babe, he calmly stated. Things are about to get messy. I don't want that for you. What? Kiba, are you seriously going to? Akamaru, he said, still staring directly into the Devapath's face. Get her as far away from here as you can. Arf. No. I can't just let you fight him by yourself, are you crazy? She yelled back at him. Let me help. By leaving you are helping. Knowing that our baby will be safe is the best thing you could do for me. I promise. Nothing you do will change what will happen, the Devapath interrupted. When faced with the overwhelming power of a god, shut the fuck up right now. Kiba slammed his fist straight into his face. To his surprise, he didn't catch in time to blow him away, sending him back several feet. Is that how you get your sick-ass kicks? He started walking towards him. You call yourself a god and stick your head so far up your ass you can't see what you do is wrong? One who does not understand true pain could never understand what is right and wrong. Is that right? He said, stopping in front of him. They stood face to face, identical in height. True pain, you think that's just something only you can understand? You think no one else has felt it? He looked into his eyes. He could see the loss of people close to him. He wasn't just another person. You have felt it, true pain. Pain said to him in a sense of praise. Don't you tell me what I fucking feel. He yelled directly in his face. Everybody feels pain differently. Who are you to decide who should feel it? Who should be submitted to it? It is the way to finding true peace. Pain replied in confidence. Look at what you've done. He pointed around, knowing he would not look. So many people, they were daughters, sons, fathers, mothers, grandparents, and friends. And their isolation breeds hatred and loneliness. Deception between nations. I will restore peace to this land. To all lands. Peace? Look around you. What part of any of this look like peace to you? Pain turned around, stepping forward and away from him, extending another disruptor blade. These silly idealisms you call peace will do nothing but doom the world, you know. I have heard enough. It is the hour of judgment. Kiba unbuttoned his jacket, tossing it to the side, revealing only his mesh undershirt. Pain. Whatever you are. Whatever happens, if I win, if I die, someone will bring real peace to this world. Someone will stop you. He scoffed. I know it won't be me. But I know someone who definitely can. You do talk big. He rushed towards him. Back it up now. He quickly pulled a kunai out of his pouch. I'll do more than that. He yelled as he rushed to him. Scene change, she couldn't move. Nobody was holding her back this time, and nobody was telling her to stay away. She just couldn't bring herself to stop him. There he was, several feet away from him, fighting against an S-rank missing Nin, and she couldn't stop him. She loved him, she believed he was strong, but she knew this monster was in a whole new league she didn't even think the Hokage could reach. Akamaru was stiff, like he was ready for blast off. He was observant, studying the movements of the fight. He had absolute faith in his master, but knew he was already starting to get tired. Pain was moving so fast Kiba had to push himself to his limits from the very beginning. Akamaru, what's wrong? Arf. It's times like this I really wish I could understand you. Scene change, he yelled, charging him again. Another contact. They were at a complete stalemate. But he could feel it. His body was wearing out. He was moving at top gear from the beginning of the fight and was already worn from everything that had happened today. I'm not going to go out like this. Besides, if our baby is anything like you, it'll be tough. I think we'll be okay. Pain slashed at his midsection. Although he jumped back, the blade still slit open a wound, releasing blood onto his clothes and dripping to the floor. I'm not going down like this. He yelled, taking another kunai out, attacking in two different directions, making Pain focus more, but notice Kiba's desperation in his fighting. He wasn't even aiming anymore. He was just slashing. He stopped the first kunai, struggling as Kiba put more and more pressure onto it. It is foolish to continue this. I know everything about your pitiful fighting style. Tell me where the Nine Tails is and I may grant you forgiveness. Heh. Do you really know it? He chuckled. Because if you did, he reversed his right kunai and threw it directly towards his face. You'd know I'm right-handed, not left. Close, but not close enough. The kunai stopped right in front of his eye. For a brief moment, everything, even the carbon dioxide being exhaled from Kiba's mouth, was halted for just that small moment in time. What the almighty push! There was no time to react. He couldn't react, he was stopped, frozen in time for a moment before being sent back at an incredible speed into a pile of debris. He heard her yell for him. Her louder-than-thunder screams were merely deafened at this point. An echo far off into the horizon. He tried to stand but couldn't. He didn't notice it, nor did he feel it at first until he saw it himself. The right side of his chest had been impaled with a coiled metal bar used in the construction. He looked to the right. He could barely see her correctly. Dizzy, blurry, unable to focus. She tried to run to him, but Akamaru held her leg. He knew she wouldn't stand a chance trying to protect him. At this point, not a lot could. Looking forward, he saw he was already knocking at death's door. Standing above him, he looked down on him in pity. This is your final warning from a god, he said. Sounding of echoes filled Kiba's head. The Nine Tails. Where is Naruto Uzumaki? Kiba couldn't hold it back anymore. He just started laughing. Knowing this was it, he had nothing to worry about anymore. If you really want to know, you shouldn't be asking me. I'm just some dumb kid. I see, Pain said sternly. Then I shall once again pass judgment. Stop. Kiba could give a weak turn of his neck to see Sakura running for him, stopping in front of him and hugging him, trying to cover him from whatever was about to happen. He doesn't know. You've already won, so just go. Please just go. She begged, holding him, forgetting to hold back her tears at the sight of him bleeding out in front of her became more apparent by the second. Hey, I thought I told you to stay back. Look how messy this is. I told you it was gonna get messy. He callously stated. She sniffed, still holding him. I don't care. You will join those who have fallen before you. This idealistic will of fire that has condemned the lives of many will condemn more to come. All this could have been avoided. Pain raised his blade, keeping the targeted angle focus on Kiba. Feel pain. Contemplate pain. Accept pain. He finally charged his blade towards Kiba for the finishing blow. No pain. A cry was made, but it wasn't Kiba's. When he opened his eyes, the last thing he had ever wanted to see happen just occurred that very moment. The blade was right in front of his chest, already covered in blood. He refused to look up. He couldn't look up. He couldn't stand to witness the martyr. But when he heard the faint whimpers of pain, he knew it was too late. Barely keeping his balance, holding the blade through his side, his best friend, his faithful companion, his pet, and his tool, Akamaru, was keeping his head up, trying to project that the sharpening pain of the blade wasn't hurting him. That if he chose to stand him again and again and again, he would be able to handle it. But he couldn't. His strength was back. He could feel it now. His eyesight from the watery translucent vision turned to a straight focused eyesight. He said nothing, rather cried out as he stood up, ripping the coil bar off the cement and out of his chest, and sent pain back several feet with a punch he never knew he had the power to deliver. Because he was still connected with the blade, Akamaru was sent away from him as well. Akamaru. Kiba, ignoring the broken bones in his body and his slow loss of blood, ran to his faithful friend, falling to his knees beside him, unable to withstand the pain anymore. Akamaru, why did you? His tears and blood combined together, falling to his shirt and some onto his fur. He couldn't say much. He could only whimper, whine, and weakly wag his tail, knowing he was able to protect his master. Akamaru, no. Please, you're the last one, please. He forgot all about speeches at this point. He knew it was useless. There was nothing he could do. He simply hugged him and rubbed the back of his head. You did so good, Akamaru. He tried to praise him, keeping his head buried in his fur. He whined again. This time asking him if he beat the bad guy. You did it, Akamaru. You beat him. You should have seen the look on his face. He appreciated the remark, giving a small flap with his tail. He gave a choked bark, reassuring him that it wasn't him that did it, but it was both of them. You're right. That's us, the ultimate tag team. We showed them. We showed everyone, boy. He said nothing after that. He picked his head up and licked his master's face one more time. When he set his head back down, he gave 3 slow wags of his tail. After which he let his last breath flow freely out of his body and passed. Kiba did not speak. He did not weep, he simply wore a blank figure on his face. Sakura was still where she was before, unable to move with the weight of the events pressing down on her. He picked up his companion and carried him away from the fight. After a few seconds of walking, he laid his faithful friend down, his face facing away from him. He always did like the view, he said to himself, petting the belly of his fallen friend. Don't you, boy? When he turned back, the surprise of now seeing his enemy standing with little to no damage to his body did not frighten him. He wasn't afraid. He learned that from Shino and Akamaru today. Don't be scared, don't be scared. Kiba. Sakura approached him, simply hugging him. She knew there was nothing she could do. She had to go, but she couldn't leave him alone, and now against the enemy completely by himself at this point was out of the question. Sakura. Kiba said. Yes, dear? Watch Akamaru for me, okay? She wiped the tears from her face as she nodded her head in compliance. All she could do now was watch him as he slowly made his way towards his opponent. Kiba. She couldn't stop him, and she knew he couldn't win. But it was something he was set on doing. She knew she was the last thing truly precious to him, and he was without a doubt willing to give the rest of his life for it. Scene change. You are truly becoming an annoying creature to eliminate. Pain said. What can I say? People want me to stick around. He softly scoffed to himself. I had hoped to not resort to using such extreme measurements for a weak creature such as yourself. But it seems I may have underestimated you slightly. As he finished, the 5 other paths joined his side, coming in from different directions. All at full power and ready to fight. Now then. In attendance, he began. The 6 paths of pain for you to witness. He fixed his gaze down, seemingly admitting defeat. When he looked back up, his eyes were completely white. His canines grew longer and his aura in general felt more feral than before. This is a Kekii Genkai. The human path said. Perhaps, said the Deva path. He is truly more beast than man now by ability. He stepped forward in front of the other 5 paths. Come, beast. Face your final judgment and finally learn to know pain. With his final sentence, all 6 ran to him. Don't be scared, Kiba, I'm not scared anymore. Chapter 16. This child. He's fighting with nothing but willpower and natural instinct. Nagato said, focusing more energy into the fight. I can see it in his eyes. I've shown him true pain. Yet he continues to fight me. His idealism of peace. Flashback, but someday I'll break the curse. If there's such a thing as peace, I will find it. Faith is better than any plan. Jiraiya was happy he decided to stay with the orphans. Nagato was a sensitive and easy-to-cry boy, but he had a good heart. Nagato. When people get hurt, they learn to hate. When people hurt others, they become hated and racked with guilt. But knowing that pain allows people to be kind. Pain allows people to grow, and how you grow is up to you. What if I'm not ready, Jiraiya-sensei? Nagato asked. I have faith in you, Nagato. I believe you'll grow up to do good things in your life just like you want. Nagato picked up a smile on his face. His shaggy red hair was still in his face, but he had been so used to it didn't bother him anymore. Have faith, Nagato. You'll find the answer. End flashback. What a fool. Scene change. Got you. He had gotten behind the human path and quickly swung at the back of his neck, going for the veins under the skin. Without looking, he simply ducked and kicked him away. What's with these guys? I've gotten behind one like 5 times already. How can they keep dodging without even looking at me? Kiba's newfound speed was unreal. He was much faster than any of the paths at this point, yet he still couldn't land a single hit. It's as if they had eyes everywhere, all seeing and knowing exactly when to move so that the speed would be irrelevant. Your clan's Kekii Genkai, it is rare, the Deva path commented. Kiba jumped back away from them again, landing on all 4s. Okay, gotta think of something. I have to find a way to separate them. Then it hit him. That ability. When he pulls and pushes things. I just need to get everybody bunched together and force him to use it now. How do I do that? Okay, let's try this again. Quickly springing his legs, he flew straight towards the Deva path. Right as he got close enough to swing, the Naraka path jumped in front of him, blocking his kunai with a disruptor blade. That's it. They keep protecting the main guy. All I gotta do is get a bunch of hits going at him for them to bunch up. Or a really big one. He quickly jumped away, landing back on his 4s at a medium distance away from them. He reached into his pouch, pulling the last 3 smoke bombs he had. You are simply wasting your time, prolonging the inevitable, said the Deva path. You're right. I gotta hurry up and kill you so this whole nightmare can come to an end. He tossed all 3 bombs at them before the smoke spread just like he expected. All 5 paths surrounded the Deva path, trying to protect him in a pentatonic formation. Now's my chance. Gotta make this quick. He quickly jumped directly above, drawing a kunai, and dove downward into the smoke. Clank. What? How the? Predictable and equally irritating, scoffed the Deva path. Kiba smirked as he ripped one more kunai out, laced with a paper bomb, tossing it at him, jumping back before he used it. The explosion went off, much to Kiba's surprise. There was no repulsion or anything. What? Did I seriously get all 6 of them? He landed as he waited for the smoke to clear. When he did, a complete look of hopelessness filled his eyes. The Deva path had all of the paths covered in a green orb, shielding all of them from the blast. There's no way I can beat him, he thought out loud. His body, though filled with energy, still was beginning to fail in functioning. He couldn't keep fighting like this for much longer. Kiba. Behind you. The distant voice from Sakura caught him off guard as he flinched, turning only slight to see the Preda path directly behind him. He couldn't react fast enough. Before he even knew what hit him, he felt the burning sensation in his stomach as his breath shortened. When he looked down, all he could see was the cold steel of the disruptor blade through his stomach, drizzling his blood to the ground. I messed up. That blade, it's draining my chakra. I can't feel anything. Am I gonna die? Scene change, /n. This is a large set of flashbacks occurring one after another. I figured this would be easier than putting the whole flashback/end flashback in this instance. Sakura looked down at her stomach. Does that mean Kiba smiled as he nodded his head? Yep. Boy or girl, they'll get their neen dog when they reach the age just like all of us. Scene change, his name is Akamaru, she said. And from now on you'll be looking after him. Kiba turned back to face Akamaru, kneeling down to get closer to eye level with him. He stuck his hand out to see what Akamaru would do. After the puppy licked his hand, he giggled at the affection and picked Akamaru up, who wasn't barking much anymore, simply wagging his tail. I'm Kiba. Nice to meet you, Akamaru. Arf. Scene change, at first I wasn't avoiding Kiba. I really was sick. I was throwing up, often had headaches, and no idea as to why any of this was happening. I finally followed my paranoia and bought a few pregnancy tests. I went to see Ino and tried it 3 times. All of them were positive. At this point her voice was starting to break, her tears slowly made their way down her face. He had no idea what was going on with me. I couldn't tell him. I was so scared he would just walk away. Or laugh at me, or tell me to get rid of it. A million different things were going through my mind. And at the funeral I saw Tsume and Kurenai Sensei's picture and just thought about, what if that was me and Kiba? What if he died and I was here holding his child? I couldn't do it. Sakura. Kiba looked at her face looking at his. She sniffed. I'm not done. She looked back at Tsunade. When I ended it, the wrong thing came out. I meant to tell him I was pregnant then. But I got scared at the last second and the wrong thing came out. When it did, I just ran. I didn't even let him say anything. Her head sank to the floor as she finished. Scene change, you know it's funny, Kiba said. I can't even tell you're pregnant, you look just as thin as ever. She blushed. Well, that will change pretty soon. Scene change, you'll be a good father, Kiba. Shikamaru smiled back to him. Scene change, Kiba nods his head and smiles. Okay. Let's go, I'll race you home. We gotta get ready for whatever guy sensei throws at us. Ready? He puts himself down onto all fours. Tucci simply watches the boy in amusement. He really was a wild kid. Go. Scene change, why don't you watch where you're going? Even Akamaru knew where to go, you idiot, what were you thinking? Sakura yelled at Kiba, violently shaking his fearful body back and forth, not giving him a chance to respond or defend himself. Yep, he thought to himself. No mistaking the scent. It's definitely Sakura. Scene change, I come up here and think sometimes. Me and Akamaru. His gaze still fixed on the sky. From here you feel like you can see everything. Like the Hokages are always watching over us. Scene change, one more thing, Kiba. Ma'am? Sakura has been slower in finishing her work. Sometimes she shows up late, tired, and has a hard time concentrating. Kiba gulped. I'm sorry, Lady Tsunade. I'll be sure to. She's happy. Keep doing whatever it is you're doing. She finished. She was telling the truth. Sakura's head would be so high up in the clouds sometimes she would sometimes stop working completely. He only gave a small smile back. Yeah. I will. Scene change, what do you think it will be? He asked. She shrugged her shoulders. I don't know. But we'll love him or her no matter what, won't we? He looked back up at her, keeping his hand on her stomach. Yeah, we will. Scene change, his shivering finally stilled. He growled as he grabbed the blade with his hands, tightening his grip around it. His chakra is returning somehow. Interesting. The Predapath commented. Shrieking out in pain, Kiba pulled on the blade until it snapped out of the Predapath's sleeve, and pulling it out of him, he quickly grabbed the blade into one hand, turning to swing it. The Predapath couldn't move quick enough as the disruptor blade dug easily over an inch into its neck, ripping a jagged line across the horizon of his throat as it slit open into a spray of blood, reacting slowly to the impact, and fell back dead. He damaged Preta. The human path stated. A minor setback, the Deva path commented. We will finish this quickly. Protect Naraka while he restores the other. The remaining 3 paths ran towards Kiba, who was struggling to keep his balance. His vision was beginning to fail him. His eyes had restored themselves to their color and his teeth had returned to their original size. He lost too much chakra to maintain that form after being stabbed by that blade. I'm not gonna run away. Kiba looked around quickly. He swore he could have heard someone talking. He quickly jumped out of the way as the Deva animal and Azura paths attacked, still managing to be able to dodge their attacks barely. I never go back on my word. He knew this voice. It was so loud, but he didn't see anyone besides the paths attacking him. He parried the animal path's attack and tripped the Azura path before jumping back, trying to regain his composure. That's my ninja way. Naruto? He called out loud. Yeah, I remember now. Our fight in the Chunin exams. Flashback, I will be Hokage. I will. Naruto groaned, struggling to stand. Kiba just chuckled at Naruto's weak attempts to regain his balance. And how you gonna do that? By lying flat on your face? He smirked. I got news for ya, I'm gonna be Hokage. End flashback, I remember it just like it was yesterday. I was pretty bummed about losing to ya. His blade collided with the Azura paths. Using his left hand, he quickly made a fist and punched it. When it flinched, he took the chance and cut the blade into its chest, kicking it back right after. You didn't give up. I had you beat. I threw everything I had at you and you still stood on your feet. You always found a way. He looked off to Sakura. She was kneeling down, keeping one hand on Akamaru's body while watching him with red eyes and a paralyzed face. She was beyond despair as she saw him fighting for his life. You surely realize you are defeated, spoke the Deva path, slowly walking to him. Give up. I will ease your passing into the afterlife. The animal path quickly shot behind him. This time he was ready. Using the same blade, he ducked, missing the stab that was aimed for his heart. Throwing himself on his back, he grabbed the path's blade and pulled it over him. When the animal path crossed over him, he shoved the blade into the path's stomach, impaling her in mid-air. He kicked her off of him, barely keeping himself on his knees as he struggled to raise himself up again. No, he slowly approached him, holding his stomach as blood still continued to seep from both wounds he had been given. He looked to his right, seeing a hallucination of Naruto right next to him. He felt him speak with him as if he was really there with him. I'm not gonna run away, he said, feeling Naruto's voice synchronizing with his. 'Cause he coughed, blood staining his teeth as his saliva carried the blood to the ground. That's my ninja way. As him and Naruto finished, he ran to him, still holding the Preta path's disruptor blade in his hand. The human path quickly jumped in between them as it attacked him with his own blade. Clashing a few times, they held their blade together for a brief moment before Kiba shifted the blades away from the center, protecting his chest. Breaking the tie between their blades, he took the break in control and lunged forward, slashing the human path's throat with his nails, watching it fall to the ground as the blood fountained from the wound into the earth. Now it was just him and the Deva path. Less than 10 feet separated them at this point, but no one made the first move. He'll beat you, Kiba weakly said, forced to use the blade to keep his balance at this point. The Nine Tails? Pain asked. He's got a pretty nasty temper. Especially when you do things like kill a bunch of his friends, break a bunch of houses, stuff like that. And I think I was the one with a short fuse. You are defeated, he calmly stated. I don't know about that, your friends here seem to disagree with you. He slightly chuckled, staggering to keep his balance. Just give up, Pain retorted, drawing a blade from his right sleeve. He felt Naruto with him again. His aura made him know he wasn't alone in this. He now knew what it was like. Pushed to the limits, you can't give up. Not anymore. Once again Kiba heard them both speaking together. You give up on me giving up. He was in his face before he knew it, yet Pain kept a calm and stoic face. Kiba didn't realize that while he had been speaking, the Naraka path had been healing the other paths. Since he had been hurt so badly, he couldn't sense or even smell the other paths slowly waking up. He stopped in mid-stab, the blade grinding against the Devapath's skin as Kiba froze completely in place. The freezing and burning sensation of an open wound covered his body. All of the other 5 paths were right behind him, spread around in a circle-like fashion to all fit in a coordinate fashion. 5 chakra disruptor blades pierced through Kiba's back, exiting in 5 different directions from his torso. His mouth soaked with blood as he grunted from the pain he could not begin to describe, allowing it to fall from his mouth like a dog's drool. The Devapath's overconfidence in Kiba's injuries overlooked the obvious fact that Kiba had a blade right against his stomach. Upon his reaction to his multiple piercings with all his strength, Kiba rammed the blade through the Devapath's stomach, exiting to the outside. He couldn't support himself anymore. He grabbed onto both of his shoulders, letting go of the blade he stuck into him as the other 5 were pulled out, leaving him practically hanging onto his shoulders with trembling legs for support. "Why do you fight against me when you have felt true pain?" the Devapath asked. Kiba coughed as he heaved vomiting blood to the ground, splashing bits to their footwear. "Because," he coughed again, "I read something from a very, very well-known man here in the village." He smirked, struggling to keep himself clenched to the cloak of the robe of the Akatsuki member. "I have a book, well, I have 3 written by him. But I found out he wrote one before all of those." The Devapath said nothing as he removed the blade from his stomach and stepped back. Kiba fell to his knees, his head facing down as blood began to form a small ring around him. "If there's such thing as peace, I will find it. I won't give up." Scene change. Nagata was in complete shock. His memories flew back to him as he quickly relived his moments with Jiraiya all up until the day he took his life. "This boy Jiraiya-sensei, you really are an idealistic fool," he said to himself. Even now, when he knows he is gone, he still professes his ambition. What a fool. Scene change. You believe peace can be accomplished by simply wishing. And it is for that your great nations can never understand true peace. These preposterous assumptions of hope and dreams. Kiba coughed before giving a low chuckle. "I already said in the beginning it won't be me to show you. Someone like me, it's not my thing." He looked up at him with a small smile on his face. "But I know someone who can. Someone who will. And when he shows up, you'll see how wrong you were all along." "A troubling circumstance. The one you speak of, the 9 tails, is he the one you believe will bring this true peace you speak of?" "I know he will. Dumb fool doesn't know when to quit. Head's kind of annoying sometimes." Pain said nothing. He simply walked past Kiba's failing body as he and the other 6 dispersed into the city to search for Naruto. The ringing in his ears was constant. He could barely hear anything. He couldn't even hear Sakura grabbing onto him, breaking down hysterically into his chest. "Hold on. Please." She gently laid him down on his back and desperately activated her medical ninjutsu, hoping to try and at least stop the blood loss. "Sakura, stop it. Just let me do this. There's nothing you can do. You have to save your chakra for the baby." She lost her vision to her tears as she lifted the flow of chakra. She knelt down next to his head, bringing it up to rest in her lap as she stroked his hair, comforting him and herself. "Would you take me to Akamaru?" he asked with a weak smile across his face. Shaking, she nodded her head, carefully picking him up. She slowly but surely made her way to the dog's corpse and laid Kiba down to where they could be facing each other. He could barely move his neck. He reached his hand over, stroking his still smooth fur. "Hey, Akamaru. I'm back, boy." She scooped his head up again into her lap. She couldn't look at him, it was too hard. His face was so exhausted, splashed with blood, sweat and tears. "Hey, is it too soon?" Kiba asked. "Too soon for what?" she replied. "I know you're only 3 months in," but he weakly raised his hand, poking her stomach with his finger. "Is there any way to tell what it is yet? You're going to find out when it's born, okay? You're not doing this to me, Kiba," she cried, holding his head tighter. "I can't. I wish I could have. Wish I'd have been stronger. I could have saved so many more people. Shino Akamaru, they'd still be here." She shook her head. "You did everything you could. And you did well, you really did." She removed her hands from his head, placing it on her stomach. After a few moments she released her focus and smiled down at her boyfriend. It's a boy. Kiba's smile grew wide as if nothing had happened to him. A son, we're really gonna a son, she sniffed, wiping the tears from her face as they still continued to fall even after she had wiped. Yes. And you're going to show him exactly how to be a great ninja just like his father. He'll be best friends with his dog just like you are with Akamaru. Hey, yeah, he'll be great. I know he will. What a drag, I couldn't come up with a name even now. Nothing comes to mind. We'll have time to think of one later. She tried to brighten the mood. It's okay, Sakura. I'm not worried about leaving you in charge of him. He shouldn't act out too badly. And if he does, just bring him to my mom, that'll teach him. He picked his hand up again, placing it onto her stomach, caressing it softly before speaking to it. Son, this is your father, be a good boy for me, listen to your beautiful mother. She knows what's best for you. I promise. He whispered into her stomach. You're going to tell him, okay? You're going to tell him. She frantically cried. Still touching her stomach, he looked up at her. Sakura, these last months have been the greatest moments of my life. I could not have asked for a better closing chapter. I could not have asked for a better mother for my son. Stop it, Kiba, just a distant explosion interrupted them. The paths were still destroying the village, searching for a Naruto who wasn't there. Sakura, those people, they need your help. You gotta go. You know you do. To her surprise, she didn't fight him. She leaned down, kissing him one last time before standing up and gazing at him one last time. The man, she fell in love with the man who was the father of her child. The man who gave his life to save her. And she was gone with that, back to the shelter to help others like he told her to. He looked up into the sky. The blue was a thick and full color, tinted by the smoke of the fires and collapses of buildings around it. The refreshing breeze of spring tickled his nose as it left as quickly as it came. I know he'll grow up to be strong. And so will you, so will all of you. He finally pasted his last smile, inhaling the fresh air around him. Whatever people say, Kiba, you're an amazing ninja. If you stopped and thought about what to do a few steps ahead, you could be better than everyone. Please keep an eye out on her for me. Tell her I'm sorry, I couldn't bring myself to confess. Now I know how she feels about Naruto, that awfully shy feeling. I know it never seemed like it at first, but you're a good friend and a good man. Nobody can take that away from you. I envy it, Kiba, don't make the same mistake I did. Not now, not ever. Say what you feel. Don't be scared, Kiba. Shino, I wasn't scared, did you see me? Finally exhaling, he reached his arm over to Akamaru, petting him one last time and leaving his hand on its side as he slowly slid his lids closed and finally let himself go. Shino, Akamaru, I'm sorry. Scene change, gasping for air as he opened his eyes, he felt as if he was waking up from a nightmare. But this place, it was beautiful. A lush forest of oaks shading the sun from bleeding through the leaves but gave just enough light to illuminate the path. He looked down at himself. His outfit was completely restored. His wounds, everything gone. Where am I? His nose picked up a new smell. It smelt like tobacco. He quickly turned around to see someone he never would have expected to see again. I never thought I would see you here anytime soon, Kiba. ASU Asuma-sensei? Asuma approached him, patting his shoulder while taking a drag off his cigarette. I've been waiting here for you to show up, believe it or not. What? But why did you wait when you thought I wasn't going to be here soon? He chuckled. When Shino showed up, I was still exploring the place, so I found him pretty easily. He told me you were probably going to off and try to play hero and avenge him. I decided to wait and see if he was right or not. I see, freaking Shino. He looked around the forest some more. So does that mean I'm? Asuma nodded. Yeah. Kiba shook his head. So you said you were waiting here for me? Why? Asuma started walking opposite to Kiba. There's someone here, I want you to meet someone I met when I died. Kiba followed close behind him in awe of how beautiful this place had gotten as they progressed until the trees finally began to clear. In front of them was a beach. Pearl-white grains of sand awaited just ahead, guarding the clearest water before him. In the middle of his view was a dock. Standing there was a man wearing the standard leaf shinobi uniform. He was facing the ocean but noticed his tall figure easily over 6 feet tall. His hair was long and straight, stretching down to his shoulder blades in a medium color of brown tied into a ponytail. "Who is that?" he asked. Tsume patted him on the back. "Go say hello." And afterwards he turned and walked back into the forest, exhaling from another drag on his cigarette. "Tsume-sensei, wait." He called out, but he was gone. He looked back at the figure. His scent wasn't noticeable. Who was he? He made his way to the dock and noticed he was skipping rocks across the water. They would hop 3 times before stopping, usually in a simple dip. After the last rock left his hand, he stopped and turned around, finally revealing his face. The front of his hair tickled the top of his headband. He was definitely a leaf shinobi. What caught his attention was his face. He was an older man, late 20s most likely. His face was completely unscarred and he bore the red upside-down triangles on each of his cheeks. "Hello, Kiba." His eyes flew open. His looks, his hair, his birthmarks. It couldn't be. Dad? His father smiled as he nodded his head. Yes. Kiba instinctually ran to him, hugging him tightly as his father returned the embrace. "It's so good to see you again, Soof." His kind speech was interrupted as Kiba delivered a hard punch to his stomach, winding him. He finally regained his balance, standing up straight again, facing his son. "All right, I deserve that. Dad, this whole time I thought you just ran away. I thought Mom scared you off. I didn't know you were dead." He nodded. "I see." He turned around, walking to the edge of the dock, sitting down at the edge. Kiba followed him and sat beside him. "I'll tell you everything you want to know, son. I promise. But why don't you tell me your story first? I'd like to really get to know my boy who's all grown up." Kiba warmly smiled as he nodded. "Okay. Well, Dad, it happened like this." Chapter 17. He skipped his bare foot across the water, skidding the top of it with his toes. "And that's pretty much it, Dad." His father nodded with a smile on his face. "A son. I'm so proud of you, Kiba." Kiba scratched the back of his head. "Yeah, well, his mother will definitely take care of him. The Haruno clan, they're not very heavy in the ninja area. They're mostly merchants and traders. Not a lot in that family become ninja. I was surprised when you brought up your mate was a chunin." "Heh. Well, it's more than just that, Dad. I saw more than just a ninja with a berserk level of strength. She's sweet, caring, she really goes out of her way for me. I know she'll be a good mom to our pup." His father placed his hand on his shoulder as they sat at the edge of the dock, observing the view that seemed to stretch out forever. At the far end of the horizon there was a small outline of what appeared to be a castle or some type of fortress. "You've done a lot in your short life, son. I just don't think I did enough, Dad. It is tragic. I never thought you would die so young, especially with your new family beginning to blossom." "Well, what about you? How old were you?" His father's hand left his shoulder as he collected his fingers together. "Honestly, son, I've been dead for so long I've completely forgotten how old I was. But I do know I was older than your mother by a year." "Dad, it's easy. Look, do the math. I'm 16, Hannah is 18. Mom is old. No, wait, she's 38. So if you left when I was really young and you said you were 3 years older than Mom, you were at least 23. He shook his head. "It's possible. But I don't think I was that young." "Dad?" His father looked at him, taking his future question seriously. "Yes, son? What happened?" He sighed. "It's a long story, and where do I even begin? Do you remember meeting Mom?" He laughed. "I don't think I could ever forget how I met your mother. It was when we were both still genin. My sensei nominated my team for the Chunin exams after we had just graduated the academy. Your mother had already been a genin for a full year, so she was pretty experienced already." "So what happened?" "Well, it's funny. See, after we finished the first part of the exam, we had to take our exam in the Forest of Death. We were given a scroll and our task was to get another scroll in order to advance. We had an easy enough time since I had a Hyuga and an Aburame on my team. We had to do the exact same thing. I actually had a Hyuga and an Aburame on mine too. Kiba replied. Really? How about that? Well, we got our scroll and we made it obviously. That's when I first saw her. Her team looked well, they looked like they knew they were going to win, I'll just say that. He chuckled. Kiba nodded in interest. So what happened during the finals? Well, the matches went like this. Flashback, a much younger brown-haired Hiruzen Sarutobi stood amongst the newest generation of genin. He looked upon the teams, surprised to only see 3 squads. Each one stood closely separate from the other teams. The first team seemed like a capable group composed of Shikaku Nara, Choza Kimichi, and Inoichi Yamanaka. They were a funny bunch. One was lazy but incredibly intelligent. The other, although a rather large man for his age, had considerable strength and control over his jutsu. The third seemed the most normal out of all of the, yet his extensive knowledge over his jutsu affecting the mind made him possibly the most dangerous out of the team. They didn't seem too attentive, as Shikaku had the look of boredom strapped across his face since they walked in. Choza was busy eating a bag of chips and Inoichi seemed impatient, tapping his foot every couple of minutes while looking around. The second team was definitely the powerhouse. Consisting of Tsume Inuzuka Fugaku Uchiha and his student's own protege Minato Namikaze. Hilariously enough, Tsume seemed to take charge of the group, though it seemed it was by force. Her nin dog Kuramaru was still a rather small dog, but he was inseparable from his master. Fugaku was a calm, collected but secretly arrogant ninja. Unlocking his Sharingan at his early age gave him a very big advantage in the finals, thought it did not guarantee him the promotion to the next rank. Jiraiya's star pupil Minato carried his deceitful look of ignorance everywhere with him. He was a quiet, somewhat feminine-looking boy, but was easily one of the most powerful of all the ninja in the room. It warmed Hiruzen's heart that this boy wanted to do everything he could to try and become Hokage for the right reasons. Something he wished Orochimaru would see so he could select his successor when the time comes. The final team was a nice surprise, as they were a late recommendation and seemed to work well together. The late entrees was made up of Shibi Aburame Hayashi Hyuga, and the final being Kayasato Inuzuka, another of the clan aside from Tsume. Kayasato's nin dog Tamamaru appeared to have that of a German shepherd, though very small. It was about an inch taller than Kuramaru. Shibi and Hayashi seemed very focused on the announcement, both being very stoic and matter-of-fact about mostly everything, especially their missions. Do the mission no matter what. Kayasato, on the other hand, kept looking over Shibi's shoulders over at Tsume, who would sometimes look back over at him only for Kayasato to duck his head away at the last second to pretend he was never really looking. She's really pretty, Tamamaru. Arf. I don't think she's scary. Tamamaru tilted his head to the side in confusion, wondering if his master was completely blind to her fierce appearance. Let me start by congratulating you all on making it this far, Hiruzen said. By making it this far you have truly proven teamwork amongst yourselves, and by all means could all be awarded the rank of Chunin. It's also the first time in Chunin exam history that the final rounds consisted of just one village. He walked over to a small bowl filled with small plastic balls. The final part of the exam is a tournament-like setting. However, because we have an odd number, one person will have a bye and have an automatic seat in the semifinals. It seems unfair, but that's how the number works since we're so short of people this year. Now then, when I call your name, you come pick a ball from the bowl. The number on that ball will tell you who you are fighting against and when it will be. The matches will begin in 1 month from today, so you have time to prepare and rest. Sitting behind the third Hokage were the much younger, just out of their teenage years to be Sannin. Hiruzen looked back at Tsunade, who stood and approached the bowl, pulling out a list to call out participants. Shibi Aburame. 15 minutes later. Now then, Hiruzen began. When I call your name, please just respond with your number. Afterwards we will randomize them to determine the matches. First, Shibi Aburame. 7, he calmly stated. Choza Kimichi. 3, Hayashi Hyuga. 9, Kayasato Inuzuka. 5, Arf. Tsume Inuzuka. 1, Minato Namikaze. 8, Shikaku Nara. 6, Fugaku Uchiha. 2, and last Inoichi Yamanaka. 4, very well. I will shuffle the numbers around in the bowl and draw 2 out at a team. These 2 will be your matches a month from now. After a few minutes, Hiruzen finally picked out his first 2 numbers. The first match will be between, he cleared his throat, numbers 4 and 7. Inoichi glanced over at Shibi, who seemed unfazed by the announcement. It was hard to tell what he was feeling since he kept his eyes and mouth covered the whole time. He had a feeling this fight would be tough. The second round will be numbers 3 and 8. Minato's face stayed the same, hopeful but humble. Choza just gave an apathetic look. He heard Minato was good being a personal apprentice of Jiraiya, but he didn't think much of it. He just kept eating. Next, numbers 2 and 6. Come on, give me my number already. Kayasato thought to himself. The last match pairing will be, he said, pulling out the last number. Numbers 1 and 9. That means number 5 will receive a bye for the first round. Kayasato grumbled to himself. Griat finally marking the matches together on a dry erase board, he inserted the last number onto the bracket. 4 versus 7 3 versus 8 2 versus 6 1 versus 9 5. You have 1 month to prepare for your match. Remember your number and your opponent. Information on the time will be sent to you as the day draws closer. For now, you are all dismissed. Scene change. The next 3 weeks dragged on. His training was interfering with the time he wanted to use to talk to Tsume. They were in the same clan, not related thankfully, but it was ironic someone in their clan was so hard to get a hold of. His concentration was so great he completely forgot about his training session with Hayashi as he landed a gentle fist straight into his shoulder blade, disabling his left arm. Damn it! He kneeled down, gripping his arm. I wasn't paying attention. I could tell, Hayashi said. Let's take a break. No. I'm the one with the bye. Everyone is going to think I got lucky in the tournament and I can't have that. Kayasato, his sensei, called. You aren't tough for fighting with a damaged arm. It's dead weight. Take a break until you can use it again. But Tsukumo sensei. Trust me, it's better to rest while you can. During your match, don't expect for them to give you that luxury. Enjoy it now. And as for you, Hayashi, are you feeling all right? Hayashi nodded, breathing rather heavily. I'm just tired. Well, you two definitely need to take 5. Not literally, of course. That gentle fist will stay in effect for a while. The young White Fong sat with his students as they enjoyed the fresh air in the training grounds. He had a lot of hope for all 3 of them, but he was worried Kayasato's infatuation with the female Inuzuka could distract him from his fight. But he was a boy just like he was. He figured Kakashi would be the same way once he became of that age. End flashback. No way. Kiba said. You were on the same team as Shino and Hinata's dads? He nodded. Yes. Hayashi and Shibi were very close friends of mine. And Tsukumo sensei was a great teacher and incredible ninja for his time. Kiba thought for a second. He knew he heard that name somewhere. Did Tsukumo have any children, Dad? Yes. I'm not sure how old he is now. He was just a baby when this happened. I remember him telling us his name was Kakashi. The light bulb went off as Kiba put it all together. Kakashi's dad was your sensei? Unreal. He laughed. It was a strong team because our sensei worked us hard, but he walked with us every step of the way. So it was you and Mom and Shino and Hinata's dad. Who else is in it that I would know? He thought, trying to put the names together. There was the Inoshika-cho group, and really? You knew them too? We were all children like you were, pup. Most of them were in my year except for your mother's team. Who was on Mom's team? Let's see, if I remember correctly, it was Minato Namikaze and Fugaku Uchiha. I definitely won't forget either of them. The 4th Hokage was on Mom's team? He looked at him as the look of shock and awe escaped his face. How come Mom never told me anything like this? He was. So what happened at the tournament? How did you and Mom do? Heh. Well, it was an interesting tournament to say the least. Flashback, he was definitely nervous. Kayasato had been preparing since the beginning of the month-long break they had. But he hadn't counted on Hayashi getting sick a few days prior to the matches. After Tsukumo ran it by the Hokage, he agreed to let him fill in for Hayashi's spot in the tournament, resulting in him and Shikaku facing off in the fourth match and giving it an even bracket. His sensei tried to ease his tension, telling him that they had all gotten very strong very quickly. Unfortunately, because he had been expecting Hayashi to beat Shikaku, he had been training for ways to fight around the Byakugan and only knew a small amount of his shadow techniques. The crowd was a powerful wave of roaring and cheering for the all-leaf participants. Tamamaru kept a stiff tail as him and Kuramaru exchanged looks between each other. "Tell your puppy to back off if you know what's good for you," Tsume commented. Kayasato shrugged his shoulders. "He doesn't really do that unless it's an enemy or someone suspicious. Actually, I think that's the same thing." Tsume rolled her eyes. "Annoying kid." "All right," everybody said, Jiraiya standing in as the third test proctor. "The rules are simple. You fight until your opponent forfeits, they're unable to fight, or they die. I can decide at any time to end the fight myself. Oh, and don't try to fight me if I jump in to stop it, or you'll be knocked out metaphorically and literally. Now then. Everybody clear the arena except for Inoichi and Shibi." Kayasato picked up Tamamaru and placed him on his head. As they walked off, they noticed a powerful staring between the two combatants, with the match haven't not even begun. "All right, you two, if there are no further questions, begin." He was a little surprised at the lack of movement going on between them. Even the light gust of wind didn't move them. Just staring, observing, waiting. "If you forfeit, I won't hurt you," Shibi said, finally breaking the silence. Inoichi scoffed, running his hands through his hair, letting the loose strands fall out and scatter across the stadium. "You think I came all this way to just give up?" He took a fighting stance. "Sorry, that's not how I do things." "I see," said Shibi. "Very well." Inoichi quickly heard a loud buzzing and turned around to see a large thick black cloud of beetles flying straight towards him. He rolled out of the way and quickly made a hand sign when he finished. "Ninja art, integrated paralysis." Shibi, who still hadn't made a single move, was surprised at the lack of excitement coming from his move. Until he tried to turn into Inoichi's direction, he realized he couldn't move. "What I see," he said, looking down at the ground. When he was pulling his hair out and letting it fall, he used the strands as a trail to line his chakra for a paralysis technique. The Yamanakas are indeed stronger than they appear. "Nothing personal, Shibi, I like you and all, but I gotta keep my chakra high when I fight Choza next round. Or if that Minato kid wins, which I doubt," he cockily stated before making another hand sign, ending with making a rectangle from his two thumbs and index fingers. "Ninja art, mind split jutsu." Shibi's body remained still. Nothing happened from what it seemed. "Strange," Shibi said as he appeared behind Inoichi. "Normally that type of jutsu requires you to leave your body." "I'm impressed." Inoichi turned to Shibi before looking back at Shibi, whose body was clearly a substitution at this point, as it was made obvious. "You're about half right, Shibi," Inoichi said, jumping back, extending his right hand out into a puppet-like style. "Even if it's a bug clone, I not only keep my body, I also take complete control over the body I grab onto in exchange for half of my chakra. Afterwards I can control that body using a mimicry of a puppet-like jutsu." Shibi nodded. "Powerful." He extended his hand in the direction of the bug clone. "But difficult to maintain. My beetles have such a simple mind, and with so many inhabiting the clone, you only manage to gain control of one mind for half your chakra out of the hundreds of thousands living within that clone." His eyes shot open. He was right. He just gave half his chakra to control one beetle. He knew he was in trouble and had to think of something fast, or the fight would be over. "One more thing," Shibi said, pointing to Inoichi for him to turn around. "Because you gave away half of your chakra so quickly, you lowered your sense of perception by a drastic amount. You failed to notice the beetles behind you." Inoichi turned around and noticed tens of thousands of beetles crawling towards him merely inches away from him. He hopped back, unaware of Shibi jumping right behind him. Inoichi turned but was too late. Shibi had already socked him in his stomach, taking him completely off guard and bringing him to the ground, pricking him with an immobilizing poison of a needle he had cuffed in between two of his fingers. "I will say this," Shibi said to Inoichi, who was now gripping his stomach in immense pain. "Had my clones been anything but bug clones, you would have won. You're a worthy opponent. I would be honored to rematch you sometime in the future." Shibi walked to Jiraiya, handing him a small bottle. "Give him this immediately. The poison should be working through his body right now. He won't be able to move, but if you give him this now, he should be fine in about an hour." Jiraiya quirked his eyebrows as he noticed Inoichi's frustrated look on his face, believing Shibi's story. "Right," he said, speaking up now so the audience could hear him. "The winner of the first round is Shibi Aburame." A mix of applause and booing filled the audience as Shibi made his way up to the waiting room with the others. Upon entering, Kayasato happily greeted him. "Man, Shibi, you were great out there. I expect the same from you. Double since Hayashi is ill." He nodded. He didn't think it was fair for him to be sitting out like this. But his attention came to focus as Jiraiya announced the next match. "All right. Choza Kimichi and Minato Namikaze, please report in so the next match can begin." Choza jumped from the balcony onto the ground and made his way over to Jiraiya, while Minato simply took the stairs and happily made his way in. He was always in a good mood somehow. Never really being frustrated or stressed under most situations from what people have noticed about him. "Right, you two. Are you ready?" Choza and Minato both nodded, facing each other directly. "Begin." Choza took no time in getting ready. He quickly flung his right arm out. Partial expansion jutsu. Minato was surprised at how quick and large his arm had gotten, easily over 7 feet in length and about 3 feet in width. He swung his fist at Minato, who only had time to block it but was forced to being staggered back to a tree. "I gotta finish this quick. His expansion technique will take me out if it lands a direct hit." Minato thought, pulling one of his special kunai out. "Gotta time this right, here we go." He let go of the fist, jumping to the left as it crushed the tree behind him. He tossed the kunai towards Choza, who easily dodged it, but just as he blinked, Minato was gone. He quickly turned around only to see Minato behind him as he delivered a knee directly into his stomach, winding him and bringing him to his knees. Space-time jutsu. How does he know that when he's so young? He quickly got his bearings back as he swung his still expanded arm towards his right in the side direction of Minato. Minato simply jumped up high enough to land back on the hand, staring down at Choza. "I knew I shouldn't have used that jutsu so soon. Too much chakra." Just as he blinked, Minato appeared right in front of his face, startling the red head. "I see," Choza said, still on his knees. "It's no wonder someone like Jiraiya-sensei took you on as his own apprentice. You truly are gifted." He looked over at Jiraiya. "I give up, Jiraiya-sensei." He nodded as he announced Minato as the winner. Minato helped him to his knees as they shook hands and both made their way back up to the waiting room. End flashback. Really? The fourth Hokage already knew space-time jutsu at that early of an age? He nodded. Minato was incredibly gifted as a child. He flourished at a very young age and never stopped learning until the day he died. So who was Mom's unfortunate victim? Heh. Well, it's interesting. Her opponent and also teammate Fugaku Uchiha was no pushover. It was also around that time when...
Thank you for your views, likes, subscriptions, and overall support of my ongoing efforts to bring great content to all of you. Check out my Patreon for more mature fanfiction. The link is in the description and like everywhere on my channel.